They need to take the fucking cuffs off.
He just shot him, bro.
They shot him.
He's about to die. They shot him in the back, man. He the cop. He the cop.
You shot my man, yo.
I didn't.
You shot my man, yo.
Hey, take that shit, yo. Who did that shit? Tell them to come back.
Who did that shit?
Hey, police just shot someone. They shot this man in the back. Police just shot Baltimore right here, Penn and North. Tweet it out, please. Penn and North, police just shot someone.
It's crazy, yo. Y'all the fuck up, bro. Y'all the fuck up tonight.
Police just shot someone and they maced someone. Police just shot someone. Police just shot. Baltimore police just shot a man. Baltimore police shot. They shot that man in the back and they got him in the cuffs and they're macing people. And they're macing people. Police, Baltimore police at Penn and North shot a man in the back and they're macing people. Tweet it out. Baltimore police shot a man in the back and they're macing people. Baltimore police shot a man in the back and they're macing people. Tweet it out. Right here at Penn and North, Baltimore police just shot a man in the back.
What happened here, brother?
Baltimore police shot a man in the back and now they're macing people.
Where did they shoot him at?
Right over there.
Back up! Back up! Back up! Clean up! Let's go! Start moving! Let's go! Start moving! Let's go! Let's go!
Baltimore police just shot a man in the back and now they're being aggressive and they shot.
Yeah, they being aggressive.
Yeah, they're
they won't
macing
give me
people.
no supervisor, and I'm trying to see. They just shot that boy
They
in
shot a
my
man
face.
in the back.
Let's go!
And now,
Y'all not gonna get enough. Y'all is not gonna get enough. Y'all ain't gonna get enough. Y'all is not gonna get enough. At all.
Baltimore police just shot a man in the back.
Let's go! Clean up!
And now they're macing
Start moving.
people.
Let's go! Move! Let's go! Move!
I'm ready for the bus.
Move! Let's go! Clean up!
I shouldn't have shot him.
Get back! Get back! Out of the street! Out of the street! Out of the street!
Baltimore police just shot a man in the back and now they're macing people. Baltimore police just shot a man in the back on North Avenue near Pennsylvania and now they're macing people. They maced all these people. They just started macing people. They had the man in cuffs. They shot him in the back and now they're macing people. This is right now at Penn and North at fucking 3 o'clock or whatever in the afternoon. They're just macing people. Baltimore police shot a man in the back and now they're macing people for no reason. Baltimore police just shot a man in the back on Pennsylvania Avenue and now they're macing people. Tweet it out. Tell everybody to come to Penn and North now. Come to Penn and North now. Come to Penn and North now. Everybody.
Clean up!
tweet it out. Get Global Rep, get all the Twitter handles to tweet it out. Coming to Penn North now. Police are macing people. They shot a man in the back. They have the man in handcuffs. And now they're macing people. Look, this guy just used the mace for no reason. Just for standing here. You saw no one provoked that officer right there.
No, he did. He's acting up by himself because he's mad.
And you saw that.
Because you're mad because I watched that man shoot him. And I watched it with my eyes. Take that shit out. With my own
Officer
eyes.
Herschel.
I seen it with my own eyes.
H-E-R-S-L. Officer Herschel. H-E-R-S-L. His name, Officer Herschel, or whatever the fuck he is.
Y'all should be ashamed of yourself.
This dude's just using the mace can because people are here talking. Officer Herschel. File a report on that motherfucker. Why are you spraying people? For talking. Everybody, come to Penn North now. Come to Penn North now, man. These motherfuckers just shot someone. They put him in cuffs and they started fucking macing people. And now they won't let anyone over there see this person die. This person is dying on the street and they're not letting anyone over there to see. They want to hide it. They want to hide it. We need everybody to come to Penn and North.
Because y'all dumbass won't kill that nigga shit, though. Or whatever happened, shit.
Pardon me, Captain.
You a minister, but you out here cursing like you're a regular nigga.
Face was puffy and he had drip.
What's up, buddy? Hey, you just get here?
I know, I've been here for a while.
So the police are reporting that no one was shot.
Right, that the gun went off, the suspect's gun. But
So why were the initial reports that he was shot in the back? The initial reports were shot in the back, then it was in the leg, and now no one was shot.
Yep, that's what we're saying. We don't know what the truth is. That's what we're saying, what the police said.
That's what the police
Based
said.
on the track record of this police department,
Or any police department.
well, especially this one, keeping it real, we honestly can't just assume that has to be accurate. We can't. We've caught them in too many lives before. Perhaps it is, but we don't know that yet.
Well, you can't believe a compulsive liar, and the entire force collectively is compulsively lied to the community.
Folks, this is the man you're hearing, Revolutionary Z.
How's it going, everyone? And we got Baltimore Spectator on the scene, everyone.
This is the man who captured the moment with Don Lemon. The infamous moment, which has been written about in several
I saw that, yeah.
publications.
Are you live?
Yes.
All right, so Baltimore Spectator is also live down here, folks.
Inspired by you, man.
Thanks.
I wasn't doing this.
That's how it works, you know. You rub off on somebody else. That's how it happened to me.
Black community control the police! 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 Black community control the police!
What's up, man? How you doing, Ruben?
Black community control the police!
How's your leg, dude? Bad question.
On the back burner right now. It's hurting, but it's all good.
Cool.
Vegas just non-stop. She's still I'm not She's saying we're alienating the community or some bullshit. Like, be glad there are people fucking here. It's not that complicated. It's one day.
Protesters now blocking off Pennsylvania Avenue, at least one lane. All the riot cops have moved out after the press briefing. The chant today is Black community control the police. Again, something we've been talking about all week long. Not just actually for many months, even in St. Louis, Ferguson, New York, Ohio. It's been said there's too many to keep up with. So there's an officer actually trying to talk to community members here. His captain is trying to pull him out, and he's like, no, I'm good.
Police trying to protect each other. We need black community control police.
He don't really want to get
I want to see that nigga waving to the camera saying that nobody shot him. That's what I want to see. We saw y'all shoot him in the back with his hands up. He didn't have no gun. They framed him. They framed him. Ask everybody that been there. Everybody. They framed him. And then none of y'all gonna fight for him because they think it was armed. Every nigga should arm. Every fucking nigga. As long as you get your dog up, you should arm if they killing us. Arms don't mean bad. Exactly. They pepper bomb the high school kids. 12-year-old. That's your own.
We need black community control the police. No,
They're saying they don't. Sorry, man.
we need black community.
I guess there's too much.
Hey, any on the water? Any on the water?
How long you been here, man?
Since it happened.
So did they pepper spray people like I heard?
A bunch.
And they said high school students? Was that today?
Yeah.
Just
High school and middle school students.
And grown people. And women and kids. My face is burning the fuck up right now. It was just a bunch in the air and I didn't even get hit directly.
Right here, we saw everything.
You were right here?
And they shot him in his back. He didn't have no gun on him at all. And now they saying he was armed. Now they saying they didn't shoot him. They make up all this shit so then they can figure out they lies to get to y'all, to keep you niggas inside so y'all don't fight. Exactly. And we posted videos. They were taken down. Now who's best interest? I have videos of witnesses. This hidden. Ask yourself that question. Who's taking these videos down? Who's removing them? Why are you guys covering the genocide of our people? This is genocide. Why are you guys covering up the genocide of our people? Hey, look at how we live. Look where they put you.
Black community control the police.
Look at your neighborhood. They got birds, bees, and everything else. Butterflies. Look at our neighborhood. All bacon, man, all these bacon ass. They didn't do this. They didn't do this. Fat ass preacher want to talk about he's here in the community. Meanwhile, he don't live here. Meanwhile, his church look like shit. But his house don't look like shit, right? His car don't look like shit. But his property that he has in his community looks like shit. That's not a person you should trust. That is a parasite. He takes and takes and takes. And then he wants to charge y'all for breakfast. Then he wants to charge y'all for breakfast for that shitty ass fried fish. Fuck that nigga. Fuck him. Fuck him. Until he comes to the community, he should get 10% of everything he got to us. Where's his reparations? Where's his ties? Where's his ties to black people? Where? How he living? How his car look?
I would never be a preacher for my black people and drive a car that they couldn't even imagine affording. That's sick. That's disgusting. That's capitalism. He's a fucking sellout. And you want to talk about peace, peace. You want to know why he's talking about peace? Because these fucking police commissioners buy them. And they come out here and tell them, keep these niggas silent. Keep these niggas behaving. And they made them top dollar. I've been in those meetings in Ferguson. I've seen that shit. You hear me? They spying out your preachers. They buying out your preachers. They buying out your preachers. How much was he paid? He came here real quick in his fucking preacher suit. How, Swag? How? How? You were ready for this, right? Because that shit was planned. That shit was planned. He going all to the media. Is he checking on the people? Is he checking on the people? Is he checking on the 8-year-old girl that makes her face?
That's the first thing he tried to do.
8-year-old girl?
8-year-old girl makes her face. 12-year-old boys makes their face.
The children with their backpacks. They took them on their bus. They maced them pepper balls. We had to walk.
You got it on tape?
Today, yeah.
That video needs to get out there.
Yeah, that's today.
Children come out here. I don't want to think I'm blind.
After he was shot?
On the brink of death, and nobody got shot. Nobody dude is about to die on the footage I got. Why he about to die? And nobody got shot. And nobody shot.
In the back with his hands up. Hands up and he was unarmed. And he was unarmed.
This community was peaceful.
They shot in the crowd of at least 50 Africans. They shot in the crowd of at least 50 Africans. They don't care about us. They don't care about us.
And that fat-ass
This is legal. This is legal. This is legal to kill Africans.
We were picking up kids who were drenched in pepper spray. My arm is burning because I was carrying kids who were drenched in pepper spray. Where was that fat-ass nigga at? Where was he? Talk about he's from the community. No, he's not from the community. He's here vamping and stealing from the community. He's just as bad as a fucking drug dealer. Worse. Because these drug dealers give you something you can touch. He's giving nostalgia and shit.
So if you guys notice...
Everybody running over there.
Yeah. Okay. Dang it. I was putting a little bit of time down on Ferguson.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, cool.
I remember. Thanks for all you do, man.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate it.
Where are you from?
I'm from Baltimore.
Oh, okay.
I just came down to Ferguson.
It's crazy the connections, man, you know? It shouldn't be that way. I wish I didn't know you, you know what I mean? Like, we should... The fuck, you know? It's the world we live in now.
That's right. So you're live streaming.
Yeah.
Good. So I can grab your feed, put it on it. We have to be more united.
Okay, yeah, yes,
So I'll
yes.
throw it on there so everybody can follow what you're doing.
Cool, man.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna leave at the earliest tomorrow. Shit, I don't know how long I'm gonna be here now. You know. But either way, I'll be back in Ferguson, so you guys can keep up with what we're doing in Ferguson and St. Louis. You know, so you can keep that feed up, and we'll throw any feeds we have from here on any St. Louis congregate sites we have.
Okay.
That's what we need to do. Start keeping this all
That's
connected.
right. And
You know.
I'll put your little you got GoFundMe. What you have?
It's a fundraiser account.
Okay, so
basically right now the one just to cover my expenses to get home.
Yeah. I'll
You
put it
know.
on. We need support. So I'll put it on.
And the more I get in there, the longer I can stay. Basically, you know. So
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah,
I appreciate it, man. So a lot of these people here were witnesses to the scene. They saw the man over here with his hands up, and he was shot apparently in the back is when the gun went off. They had just let off high school students off of the bus, and younger students. They came to look at what was going on, and they got pepper sprayed horrendously. A 10-year-old boy pepper sprayed, and many other kids. There's a video of it. A gentleman's going to upload it. When I see that video, I will get that out far and wide. Again, it's almost how it started last Monday when people were angry. That started with police corralling and attacking high school students trying to march. Unfortunately, mainstream media stopped reporting that and only reported the riots, but those were in part due to how the high school kids were attacked that day. It was high school kids throwing rocks at the police because they were trapped. They had been declared war on. They were defending themselves. Not today. Not today. No. I'm talking about the bullshit story from last Monday.
Yeah.
How remember when they trapped all those kids and started attacking them? You know.
Why do they attack the youth?
That's what I'm saying.
You know,
exactly.
Attack us. If we got guns, we can protect our youth. You know what I'm saying? Why you attacking our youth? Why you trying to make them scared? Why you using them as a tool to divide us? You know, we so worried about our kids that we'll submit to the system and just for our kids' sake.
Right.
Protect our kids.
Right.
But that's not how it's supposed to go, man. We as black people need to come out here with our guns
and protect our kids because they just shooting. They just shooting. What you supposed to do? Our natural instinct is to survive.
Self-defense, survive.
I mean, what we supposed to do? We're not supposed to just take being killed sitting down. You know what I'm saying? God gave us the understanding or the will to live. He gave us that. You know what I'm saying? We're not supposed to be cut down short by no man. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So why do these cops have the right? By no man. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
So why do these cops have the right to kill us? Why? It don't make sense.
They don't. They shouldn't.
Well, if you look at what's happening.
I mean, technically they don't, but they get away with it because the police unions, they protect themselves, they change. But they get away with it because the police unions, they protect themselves, they change the story. The mainstream media only reports what they say.
You gotta understand that is the system. You gotta understand that is the system. It is a system, it is a parasitic system that wants to keep us down, that we are a colonized people. We are victims of imperialism. 600 years ago, Portugal invaded Africa, stole Africans from Africa. 100 years ago, Portugal invaded Africa, stole Africans from Africa, and dispersed us across the world. You understand what I'm saying? So now we here, and we don't have, we're not supposed to be here. That we're not even. I'm saying, so now we here, and we don't have, we're not supposed to be here. That we're not even supposed to be here getting killed by cops. We're supposed to be in Africa. That's what I'm saying. So now we here, and we don't have, we're not supposed to be here. That we're not even supposed to be here getting killed by cops. We're supposed to be in Africa. That's where we're supposed to be. If you want to blame. Blame anybody, blame white people, blame your ancestors who had the evil plan to come and steal Africans for labor so you can build up this land you call America, and that's what you're protecting. Your ancestors who had the evil plan to come and steal Africans for labor so you can build up this land you call America, and that's what you're protecting. You're protecting that relationship that you had with us. That's what you're protecting. You don't want us to rise up, because if we rise up, we don't need you no more, and we don't understand that you are parasites. And so we need to erase this relationship that we have to this oppression, this white power system, the system of colonialism and imperialism and capitalism. All that got to go. All that's got to go. And when that happens, then you'll see how Africans, black people, come together in harmony and give to the world everything that they gave to the world before we were slaves. Not all knowledge came from us. Everything came from us. Everything. So the world is trying to tell y'all, with all this stuff that's going on, all the global warming, all the wars, all that type of stuff, the world is trying to tell white people, give black people their freedom. Let the black people go so they can take care of this world, so they can take care of this earth, because white people is destroying it. White people are destroying this world. So what all the world is just saying is, man, black people Y'all need to take back what's y'all. Y'all need to get back what's y'all, so y'all can love the trees, so y'all can love the plants, the food. You know, that's what they're trying to say. I know white people don't want to hear this, but y'all need to be reminded. And if you right out there and you want to help us, give us reparations. Give us back what you stole from us. The white community has 22 times the wealth of the black community. Give it back, because it all come from us. All come from the backs of my granddad, my grandma. Y'all raped my grandma, raped my granddad. Give it back. Give me back my pride. Give me back my history. It's a shame I don't know who the hell I am, because y'all stole me. Give it back.
Thanks for talking to me. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, so the scene is definitely calming down here a little bit. Of course, it has a lot to do with the fact that riot cops are no longer here. I'm going to give you guys, and let me get in shade so I can see the chat real quick. Breakbeat Junkie, thanks for modding for me, posting links. Brian Hayes, thank you. So let me give you a recap. First reports I got was that a gentleman was shot in the back, a black gentleman was shot in the back by police. And the reports I first heard from Fox News that police had first given is that police said he had a gun, and then he threw it, and then he was shot in the back. That was the first report I heard. And then it changed to he was being shot in the leg, he refused medical attention, but they took him in an ambulance anyway. And now the police are saying, and the mainstream media cameras, reporters are spewing it over and over and over again, that nobody was shot. There were witnesses here that told me they saw it all happen. He put his hands up and his back was turned, and he was shot in the back. They heard the gun go off. And then one of the ladies said that she saw him on the ground holding his chest, gasping for breath. And if he wasn't shot, how did that happen? Why do their stories always change time and time again in St. Louis, where I'm from, in Chicago, in New York? Why do the stories always change? And the last story is always the one that the mainstream media is going to report over and over and over again. And while a lot of us have been trying to expose lies of a lot of these police stories, most people still don't want to hear it. Well, the more and more this happens, and the more of us that get out here and report the truth, hopefully eventually people will stop believing, more people will stop believing police lies, more of these police apologists who are willing to believe anything they say. And maybe that's because you have a father who's a policeman, or maybe that's because you want to be a policeman yourself, but you can't because they won't let you in, Kevin. There's many reasons you might want to believe that, and you're human, I get that. I'm not doubting your humanity, I understand, but I'm just urging you to start looking at all this evidence, start looking at all these police shootings, how the stories continually change. And officers never, or rarely ever, get any punishment. And when they do, they're usually scapegoats. These 6 officers from Freddie Gray are scapegoats. They never strap people in the back of those paddy wagons. They never have. I've talked to so many people, everyone arrested has never been belted in. They always give people rough rides. It's a culture in the police force, and they're using those 6 officers as a scapegoat instead of condemning the entire system. The entire Baltimore police culture needs to be erased, dismantled, and started over again. And that goes for every police organization in the country. Fraternal order of police need to be taken down immediately. We should not, I'm all for collective bargaining rights, but it's a civil service job like that does not need a union. If they need a raise in pay, they can take it up with the politicians. There's no need for a union. You're not bargaining against any corporations. The government should pay their employees adequately for the job they do. There's no need for a union. All they do is protect their own, hire lawyers, bail killer cops out of jail, and they need to be dismantled now. We need political pressure. We need to end them now. These prosecutors are in ties with the police unions. The police unions support their campaigns. McCullough in St. Louis. He is basically in bed with the police, and we're supposed to trust him in the messed up Darren Wilson case that they completely, purposely fucked up. Darren Wilson should be in jail. And here once again in Baltimore, the police unions. There's even reports now and some evidence that we're going to try to highlight that Mosby is purposely messing up this case as well. The witnesses she's talking about are not some of the witnesses that some independent reporters have found that actually saw what happened on the street. They're not using the actual witnesses, the right witnesses. So just like the Darren Wilson case, it's going to go to grand jury, it's going to go to trial, and these officers are going to be out because based on the evidence presented, they're not going to find these officers guilty. I hope that's not the case. I hope Mosby is like what people are hoping for here, an inspiration, maybe somebody new, maybe a beginning, but this might be just a bone that they... Journalism, citizen journalism. They're the ones with the guts. We were the ones that would not go in the press corral, while CNN and all their counterparts cower in the press cage. Fuck that shit. It's done. I'm done. You guys should be done too. Start your own journalism. Alright, I'm going to go down now. I'm going to try to find some of the people I'm here with, regroup, see what's going on. I will, I can't tell you when I'm going to go live. I just don't know what's going on today. I wasn't expecting this at all. So follow me on Twitter at revolutionary_Z if you're watching on. Of course, Fox is not covering our action at all. Geraldo's gone. He got his racism in. They can't report when something's this outrageous. It goes against everything they reported already. So I appreciate you all for tuning in at short notice. Again, I will be up live when I need to be, when there's something to stream. Otherwise, I will keep feeding you reports via Twitter and Facebook, anything I find out. Obviously, people I know who are people at home that can give me tips, feel free to text me, Facebook message me, anything you hear. I'm only one person. I can't keep up with everything, so I do rely on your help at home. Everything you guys do on your computers at home is important. Spreading the links, giving me information, spreading the truth out there. Everything is important that you do. Thank you so much. I can't do it without you. And so Revolutionary Z from Penn and North for now. After another police shooting, follow me on Twitter. I will update you. I will be back at some point. Goodbye.
Are you Daniel? Okay.
what he thinks about what's going on in Tulane with this Burkholderia pseudomallei that got out of the lab, and they still don't know how it got out. Maybe we'll talk to him about that, but primarily I want to talk to him about Jade Helm. Joining us now is Steve Quayle. Thank you, Steve.
Wow, David, good. It's really nice to be on with you because Jade Helm, I think, needs to be...
Just block away. I need to do something real quick.
This is the first time in history that a 2-month...
Just bear with me.
Head southwest on Gold Street.
No.
Focusing on the American public. We know that the same tactics that are being proposed for the exercise to take place between the hours of midnight and 4 or 5 in the morning is exactly what the special operations troops did prior to the bombing of Iraq and all of our different Middle Eastern ventures, whether it's Afghanistan. In other words, you move the special operations community in prior to an event. Now, remember, I want to take everybody back to Larry Greatwall in his book, No Place to Hide. If people remember, he was the one that penetrated the weather underground when Bill Ayers and 24 other elite from Ivy League trained schools were talking about the necessity in the early 70s of killing 25 million Americans, and prior to the killing of them, moving them into detention camps for re-education. Now, I know, David, that you've read his stuff, but here's the larger context. I think that people are being tied up with the, the events or the implementation of how they're going to round up people and kill them, and they're forgetting the idea that when Bill Ayers was making this comment, he was deadly serious. Now, I've just taken the population density at that point in history, moved it into our point in history, and the numbers I've heard from special operations, active duty generals in the past, contemporary military and intelligence agents, is they're up to 80 million to 100 million people. So I think if people put it into context, notice a change. Notice a change when Middle East terrorists became obviously embraced by this administration. Now, that's the context. I think that people have got to understand that context, David, because what we're talking about is not an exercise. When the local police are told to stand down and not respond to gunfire, by the way, it's a live fire exercise. When we've seen massive YouTube videos, you guys at Infowars.com have led the charge in showing all the videos coming into you from all over the country. People are now starting to get it. And the point that I want to really get across to everyone today, and thank you for taking this hour out of your time to interview me, is this. This is the full-scale implementation of the red, the blue, and the green list. The red list are people. Now, do you remember, David, and I'll let you obviously respond because that's just my intro, the days years ago when gun owners' homes were being GPSed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we warned about that. And we tried to get people to understand. I was literally in my front yard in right at a mountain community at the base of the mountains in Bozeman, Montana, when the guy came up with his GPS unit and his bicycle and came literally to my front door, and I watched. The reason I didn't challenge him at the time, I wanted to see. To the left of me were leftists, to the right of me were leftists, and I wanted to see if they even got GPS. Absolutely not, okay? So I watched. This is not a report. Well, we heard massive reports of that happening. And the deal that people have got to understand is this, that with the implementation of the red list, the blue list, and green list, that was given to me almost 20 years ago, actually before that, about how it would be implemented when they were ready to make their move by the former head of the Environmental Protection Agency, who was murdered for the Western United States. So that wasn't just, quote, internet talk, and obviously that at that point the internet was just in its beginnings. But I think it's important that people have got to understand that this explains everything. It explains the Chinese, it explains the Russians, it explains the North Koreans, and it explains the assault coming on the United States from Mexico. Remember when we broke the story? I think Alex had me on to talk about the Chinese troops. You guys verified it below the border.
Yes.
And then the thing that people have got to understand is that this is the plan. So when I say don't lose track of it in perspective, I want to just make one sentence and I'll give it back to you. In No Place to Hide, I call him Great Wall, maybe it's Grathwall, explains that the weather men actually believed that they would be successful in overthrowing U.S. government, and that with the help of the Cubans, Chinese, Russians, and North Vietnamese, they would occupy America. Now remember, this is during the Vietnam War. Americans would have to be re-educated in camps similar to what communists did in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and other countries that they had taken over. And then here's one of the most chilling revelations. I asked, well, what, Great Wall speaking, well, what is going to happen to those people we can't re-educate that are diehard capitalists? And the reply is they'd have to be eliminated. So, David, that's the context of what we see. The American people, as Alex has pointed out, as you've pointed out, as the, going on day after day, hours after hours, have become the enemy. And now in the face of basically nuclear tension, and for the record, I used to write about nuclear weapons and their effects and during the Cold War years, and civil defense and all that stuff. So as I look back on the perspective, we have seen the absolute taking apart of our military, our top flag officers and generals fired, any battlefield experience, and we've seen complete redirection of funds from foreign enemies to the internal enemies. And I've read on the air the letter that was sent in those days by, I believe it was either Janet Reno or Napolitano to the Russians requesting their help and the foreign troops. So you can't deny it any longer. People used to poo-poo black helicopters. They used to poo-poo Russian troops, Chinese troops.
Well, of course, exactly. We've had the article we put up over the weekend that Paul Joseph Watson and Alex Jones put together, listing all the many times that they have defined who their domestic enemies are. It's not just what Larry Grathwohl is saying. We've been seeing this coming from the administration. We've been seeing it coming out of the military academies and other think tanks that are associated with the military. We saw it coming out of the MIAC report. When they define what their enemy is, when they come in and do things like the NDAA, and then they start having these training exercises like we saw in Fort Lauderdale, where it looks like they're actually implementing the NDAA, dragging people who are civilians down the street, taking them off in helicopters, marching them in single file with military guards on either side, putting them into white vans and driving them off. I mean, that's exactly what we would expect to see if they implement the NDAA. But, of course, they told us, don't worry, we're not actually going to do that. I don't believe that they're not actually going to do it. I don't know when they're going to do it. But, of course, as many people have pointed out, whenever there's been a massive false flag attack or whatever, they've had a drill that's going on exactly at the same time in the same way. We saw this with the 7/7 bombings in London and the subway bombings. These people came back the day or so after and said, well, isn't this amazing? We were running a drill in exactly the same place with exactly the same scenario at the same time this was happening. It happened with 9/11. They can always use that to keep the people who are compartmentalized to not understand what's going on. And then the mass public looks at this and says, well, yeah, this came out after the fact. But when we expose it before the fact, maybe this particular time this won't happen. Maybe they will just do some kind of a training exercise. But we always need to be on the alert. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come right back to you. Steve Quayle, we're talking about Operation Jade Helm, and Steve is going to tie this together for us on what he thinks is the broader picture. We'll be right back. I want to go back to Steve Quayle. And Steve, you were talking about the fact that you're concerned that this is coming to the next step, coming to fruition in terms of a war against the American people, talking about Larry Grathwohl. You're talking about the red list, the blue list, and the green list. Break that down for the audience.
The red list are the primary target for the New World Order in the United States of America when the order is given. The lists already exist, and again, according to, and I want to make this clear, I cannot know this stuff unless people tell me. Just like Alex gets tips, you get tips, David. There are people out there that genuinely love their country. So that's how I got this. The red list are primarily firearms owners. They are constitutionalists. They are people who have been politically active in resisting the New World Order, and those are the people that are their targets. And let me make this clear. They're not coming to take the guns away. They're coming to terminate, exterminate, blow away the gun owners. Again, special operations teams are not sent in to take prisoners unless it's a high-value target for a later date. They basically are trained to go in and just obliterate, okay? Now, again, when I get told this by a four-star general, active duty, and by the way, you guys have more probably active duty spec ops and spooks in Austin than any other city in the United States of America. You probably know that. If you don't, I will tell you that. And the thing that's fascinating to me, David, is the red list basically goes down the first 30 days, okay? So let's say they've increased it to 60 days. Well, they're combining now two different events. Now, the system that's been set to communicate with law enforcement from the Department of Homeland Security is a pretty secure system now. They can lock out individual officers from being able to hear the general alerts. They can punish or they can terminate. Now, these are really hard statements for people to understand. Quick anecdote, 30-second version. Chief of detectives in a major metropolitan city heard me on, I think it was one of the interviews Alex and I were doing a couple years ago. He didn't think I was basically upfront with the information until a foreign observer was assigned. I told him what to look for. The foreign observer knew everything about his family, his children, when they went to school, how much money he made. He knew everything, and he rode along in the back of two detectives' cars. And the interesting thing is I got a call from the individual probably a week later, and he said, "You're right. This is going down just exactly as you said." Well, I wasn't the originator of that. The blue list are law enforcement, National Guard, and anybody who's contributing to the execution and the takedown of the red list. 30 days to 60 days after that, those guys get wasted. Now, I don't know what word you would use, David, but they're murdered. They're killed.
Yeah.
Now, where have we seen that in history before? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, the Navy SEALs that got bin Laden, right?
Yep, you got it.
Yeah.
And so, as a matter of fact, before we went on this show, I was contacted by a Navy SEAL overseas, and he said, "Steve, I cannot believe what's happening to the country I love," and was ready to lay down my life for. He said, "It's like a pall, if you will, a blanket of darkness has settled over the country, and people can't see." What's happened, David, is one of the things that I've really tried to do in talk radio and all the stuff I've written and the interviews I've done, 9,000-plus hours, is to get people to understand. You've got to understand the root of evil, because everything else is an offshoot of evil. May I speak? I'll give you one more interview that took place recently with a personal friend of mine, known to me, who met with various generals, retired, and what they told him was simply this, is that it is going operational. Now, this is generals. This isn't make-believe. This isn't scuttlebutt. This isn't internet rumor, okay? And the gentleman just happened to be at the top of their hit list.
We got to go to break, Steve. Hang on, we're going to come right back. And, quite frankly, it's kind of like the couple that drove the car off the GPS bridge. How many signs do we need before we start to pay attention? If it isn't happening now, it's going to be happening very soon. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Steve Quayle talking about Jade Helm. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host, and we're talking to Steve Quayle, stevequayle.com. We were breaking down, Steve was breaking down for us the red list, the blue list. We haven't gotten to the green list yet, but Steve, just before we had to go to the break, you started talking about a source that you had and who thought this was going to be operational. Tell us what he said. Start that over again for people who are just tuning in.
Former Green Beret had a meeting with retired generals and high-ranking former enlisted men who were very concerned because the friend of mine that had the meeting was asked to come to the meeting because supposedly there was a Pentagon memorandum put out about some of the people in this country that they are forbidden to listen to. He happened to be one of them. Alex happened to be one of them. I happened to be one of them. Hawk happened to be one of them, and Doug Hagman happened to be one. There were two other guys that he couldn't remember their name, one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast, and I don't know it or I'd tell it. Here's the issue. The issue is, David, that the American people must understand that the sheer placement of the tanks, the armored personnel carriers, troops on the streets, and everything else is indicative. Now, let's talk about Jade Helm, the name. May I do that? The blue list simply are the people that they go into re-education and are assimilated. They get to live, but they get to live as perpetual drones or techno-serfs at the behest of the New World Order. The thing that is really critical for people to understand is that Jade Helm's name, Jade is always associated with China. It has nothing to do primarily with the Middle East. It has everything to do with the Far East. If I tell you the captain's at the helm, that means he's steering the ship. That means that he is the one who's in charge of the direction. One of the Chinese demands upon the United States government was the fact that they needed to disarm the American public. You remember that story when it came out that China absolutely demanded that the American public be disarmed?
Yeah, I remember that was kind of strange, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And there's always something behind that. It's kind of like when the UN came out and said, you need to shut down Colorado and Washington State. The federal government needs to shut that down because we have a UN drug treaty. And, of course, it was the UN that set up the schedule for the war on drugs 10 years before Nixon declared the war on drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what's important is everything's in a name. Now, look, it's not lost in the financial markets that China has amassed the world's largest gold hoard, and this has everything to do with the name Jade Helm 15. Obviously, 15 can relate to the year that it's going to be implemented, as in this year. China is going to make an announcement at some point, and we're seeing it with the AIIB Bank. We're seeing it with the nations abandoning former allies. It doesn't matter if it's Australia. Doesn't matter if it's Britain. It doesn't matter who it is. Everyone's going to China because basically it's a truism, a maxism in the world that he who has the gold makes the rules. One of the things the bankers have been able to do is to transfer the gold that was in the United States. It's irrelevant if there's anything in Fort Knox. I'm here to tell you that there's nothing there. The point being is that China, with its 30,000 plus tons of gold, by the way, the World Gold Council is totally inaccurate in the country's gold holdings. They're wrong. Russia, for instance, has right now in excess of 10 to 15,000 tons of gold. So the point is, let me make this clear. Jade Helm may be the orchestration and the introduction of the Chinese yuan or renminbi in a gold-backed or commodity-backed form. At that point, the dollar will lose value almost overnight, if not become worthless. My guess is, just quick and dirty, it goes down 50% in a matter of days and then another 30%. Well, that's not going to make anybody happy in the United States. The point being is that the riots will be generated. Now, here's something people need to do. Go to the root of the problem. You understand the fruit and how it will be implemented. In order for the communist revolution to take place, they want to engender civil war. I've been saying that. Alex has been saying that. And by the way, obviously with the Mayak report and others, when the veterans were vilified, any man or woman who has served in this country in any official capacity had to note that this man's military, and I've never been in the military, but that's what a lot of them call it, has changed so dramatically. And it's fascinating to me that even yesterday or the day before, I may be off a day, but the President of the United States has now declared they want to cut back the military pensions. At the same time, there's unlimited amounts of money to purchase billions of rounds of ammo, MRAPs, the police department who have been militarized. So here's what I'm saying.
When you're talking about that, Steve, I think it's very interesting that it was just last summer that the Pentagon announced that they were going to stop giving equipment to fire departments. This was something that they have been doing since right after World War II, giving equipment to small rural fire departments because they can't afford very much, and they're the ones who have to deal with the really large fires. And so they shut that down. It stayed shut down for about a month, but there was a lot of pressure from the firemen, from congressmen and senators. They got that restarted. But that was happening at the very same time they couldn't get enough equipment quickly enough into all these small towns for law enforcement. They only wanted to give equipment to people who had the power and the authority to arrest. That was going to be what they were going to do it for, not to the fire departments. They wanted to completely shut that down.
Well, and you're correct. So the point is that, in essence, all the fire departments, any authority figures that with the power to arrest, and by the way, everybody, as you know, has been given the power to arrest now, from IRS agents to, remember when the Forest Service Rangers never wore weapons? I can tell you from watching them, I take a lot of photographs, and, in the national parks, and now you would swear that you would declare freely. You can't believe how weighted down those guys are with weapons in their car, AR-15s and shotguns.
And, of course, you shouldn't worry about the fact that they got billions of rounds of hollow point bullets, which the military doesn't even use. You shouldn't even worry about that. As we got all the pushback, they would look at the small purchases for some of these organizations and say, well, that's just for target shooting. But it's $3 billion. They would take the very smallest ones and they would push back against that. But we won that fight. And I guess, Steve, the question is, we also had this fight about a year ago with them trying to start the war in Syria with a false flag sarin gas attack, trying to blame that on the appropriate parties so they could use that as a pretext for war. Do you think that because this has been exposed, has gone viral, and there's so much talk about it, do you think that they will just stand this down and it'll just be a training exercise? Not to say that they won't do this in the future, but don't you think that the very publicity that has come there might make them to stand down on this for the time being?
That's what I'm praying for, literally, okay? And I literally am asking the prayerful, believing Christians around the world to pray against this, because, again, it's kind of like when in even the Old Testament times, David, when, the idea or the plan to murder all of God's people that, was taking place, God raised up somebody, whether it was the prophet Elijah, who could read the king's thoughts while he slept on his bed. I think that when at least a covert operation gets exposed, that they have to rethink. And let me share this. These guys have supercomputers calculating every single step and every single response. They have algorithms. When I broke the story about algorithms, the mathematical, if you will, structuring of specific, assassination parameters and rating people on a different scale, they have their targets already gridded out. It is my prayer, it is my concern that enough people scream about this, that enough people go to the congressman, because I posted a couple weeks ago, do you remember the old miniseries America?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
You remember that the scene where the Russians come in under the guise of being, quote, national terrorists and kill all of Congress?
Yeah.
And the Russian is addressing? Well, isn't it interesting that, what was it, the senator from South Carolina made the statement that, Obama should have the right to basically do away with Congress. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, effectively, he has, hasn't he? I mean, he pretty much does whatever he wishes. He's not constrained by the Constitution, by laws. He's not constrained by Congress or their threats. I mean, they're saying now, he wants to do he wants to implement the UN's climate change treaty just by executive order, and the Republicans are saying, well, all these countries need to realize that we just may undo that. They know they're not going to undo anything. These guys are not doing anything.
Something? This is something critical. And please understand, the root is what I'm talking about. If people will go on my website and go to my alert section, I just posted this as Nico was giving me the countdown for the break. And I didn't know this. I'm not a video gamer, but are you familiar with Diablo 3?
No.
Diablo 3, the main character, the witch doctor, is Jade Helm, okay? And I want to read this because, again, this has this. Even Alex is talking more and more. When I say even Alex, as Alex is talking more and more about the demonic manifestation, the supernatural element, people have got to read this. It's on my website, stevequayle.com. Go over on the right. It's the Q alert, big Q, and it says alerts. I was blown away by this. Some lady named Jean sent it to me, and I want to read this to you because and it's just a quick paragraph, It says the witch doctor. That's the witch doctor is a character that uses the jade helm, again from their website. He weaves the power of the spirits of the unformed land, summoning creatures from beyond the grave. He summons frightful, undead vermin and other creatures for protection and offense. Uses destructive poisons, acids, fire attacks, power spells, and summons with mana a slow, accruing but deep well of energy. The witch doctors make use of a variety of weaponry. I think that the critical thing that people have to understand, you brought up Syria. Here it is in context. If people can understand this simple concept, everything, makes sense. Number one, in order for the Mahdi to come on the scene, that is obviously the Islamic savior. That is obviously the reign and rule of Muhammad on earth. There has to be a global nuclear conflagration. Are you aware of that?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and please, I only ask that basically to allow you to feed back because I don't want to dominate, but I think we only got an hour. The thing is that we are now seeing the disruption of all the countries in the Middle East. Well, classical Christian dispensationalism always said the 10 nations were the Holy Roman Empire. I said, decades ago, this is only to put it into perspective, that I saw a 10-nation federation building and coming into being in the Middle East. Now you've got the whole Middle East on fire. You've got basically the ultimate betrayal of Israel by the United States. Now, whether people like Israel, don't like them, the point being is in the Old Testament prophecies of Zechariah, it says all the nations of the world will gather against Jerusalem. That's happening.
I think you're very right. You know, what we need to hope for is that by exposing this, we are going to shut it down at least this time. Perhaps they'll decide that maybe they'll just do this exercise on an annual basis, and maybe by Jade Helm 17 they'll actually roll it out. But I think you're right when you said earlier we need to pray about this. We need to ask that this would not happen, that we would have peace, not only in our country, but in these other countries. And you know, I should have mentioned it earlier too. You know, Alex is having a hernia operation today. I'd ask people to pray for Alex, pray that he would have a successful outcome, there wouldn't be any complications, that he would be at peace with this and have a quick recovery. So I'd ask for people's prayers about that. And he gave me this before he left. He said that he's going to be running I just want to mention this quickly, a free shipping special. It's our April Fool's special, but there's no fooling. We do have free shipping through Wednesday, and this is the last chance. This is the last day to get DNA Force. He had that expiring at the end of March, but he's run it for one more day. You can get that for 30% off. It's about $40 off of those ingredients. Of course, you need to have clear minds and healthy bodies to fight tyranny, and we have Nobel Prize-winning studies that confirm that the ingredients in this DNA Force will help your body, its mitochondrial health, will help it to fight the toxins that you're constantly exposed to. So again, that's 30% off the very last day, DNA Force, and you can get free shipping on everything at the store, no fooling. Now, Steve, as you were pointing out, I think it's very interesting to look at this enemies list that they have, and the fact that you know, the connection that the Chinese government is starting this Asian investment bank, and that is really taking off. I mean, that's turning into an avalanche of people who are signing up for that. And of course, the Chinese are flush with cash. They're using this in a very different way than we have used the IMF fund, but even the United States is trying to get on this just so that they won't be left off. We see a massive shift from the United States, of course, to China, but that's been going on for quite some time. Everybody can see that. But it's really accelerating at this point, isn't it?
Well, it's not only accelerating, but, you know, somebody said, what's in a name? My answer to that is everything. When any operation is chosen, there is usually a reason for the name being chosen, and that's why I believe that Jade Helm is so critical. Let me make this clear, and this is something that I stand on after 10 or 12 books. I think I'm up to 12 now. Thanks for announcing that. But the point that I'm trying to provide for people is a perspective, how to embrace this. Because if you try, and David, you'll find this out, if you try and look at this purely in the natural, there is you cannot look at it purely in the natural, because it's like and I'm going to use the word, supernatural evil force that's seeking to subject and subjugate the people of the world, not only kill them. Look, the Illuminati, Alex is...
Yeah, and it's multi-generational as well. I mean, that's something that we see, this relentless progression towards this. And it's like, why would the people care so much to pass on an agenda from one generation to the other? You would think each generation would have its own agenda. But as you point out, this is a supernatural backing behind this. That's, I think, why this continues along this same path of progression from generation to generation.
Well, and again, that's why I'm accelerating my efforts. Look, I don't know how long I have. By the grace of God, I thank everyone for their prayers, and I do pray for Alex. Thank God, a hernia. I had an operation years ago, hernia operation, and when they do them right, you're on your feet pretty quick. You hurt a little bit, but may my prayers go with him, and I thank God for everyone who prays for Alex's safety, the protection around his family. But I want to share something, David. This is important, because unless, and I want to say this, if this were my last time on talk radio, I would say what I'm going to say right now. Unless people understand the supernatural root of evil, they will not understand that when the Illuminati talks in the Georgia Guidestones about 500 million people being left, Alex and I did a show where we quoted every, person of power and how they hate humanity. The vaccines, it was on Infowars.com when we were going to have this level 5 biological shutdown of the country. Alex let me pray at that point, and I said, the only thing I got from the Lord was, watch what I will do. Within 24 hours, we were going from a global pandemic, shutdown, and martial law to the thing fading out and fizzling out. When we started exposing Ebola, the thing faded out and fizzled out. Not to say it won't come back. The point being is when you hear of almost ridiculous releases of some of the most deadly pathogens in the world, and I wrote Breathe No Evil 15 years ago, the point is that I know how these people think, because, again, there is a God in heaven who reveals the secrets to his servants, the prophets. I'm not a prophet. All I am is a watchman. Now, I want to
Absolutely. Hang on, Steve. We've got to go to a commercial break. When we come back, I do want to talk to you about that book, Breathe No Evil, in light of what just happened in Tulane University. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight in Austin, and we're talking to Steve Quayle. We've been talking about Jade Helm, and Steve's pulled us back to talk about the broader context. And, Steve, I want to talk about your book here, Xenogenesis, Turning Men into Monsters. You'd also talked about, you also had a book, Breathe No Evil, where you were talking about bioweapons. And we've just gotten a glimpse into the massive, if you want to call it, incompetence of the CDC and these biotech companies who are bringing foreign pathogens, very deadly pathogens, into this country. We just saw an example of it in Tulane, to give them a gain of function. That's what they call it, enhancing them to withstand medication, to also spread more easily. And so we have to look at this and say, what is the madness behind this? Why would they even get themselves involved in something like this? But break down your other book, Xenogenesis, Turning Men into Monsters.
Well, xenogenesis is important for people to understand, because behind the intentional release of bioweapons, remember this, that when people are being exposed to headlines that there's been a strange release, or that the CDC, that Center for Disease Control, thought that the last remaining supplies of smallpox always mysteriously turn up, every pathogen worldwide that has been located, isolated, or reanimated is designed for bioweapons. The basis of all bioweapons is ultimately first to kill the enemy, but ultimately to end all life. When I broke the story, David, 30-second important story on race-specific bioweapons in South Africa, designed by Dr. Wouter Basson, that went wild throughout the world. There was absolutely a project called Project Coast. But yes, to give it a more impetus, when Alex and I, or whoever, talks about singularity, that talks about transhumanism, that talks about all of the different technological enhancements to mankind, super soldiers, this is stuff that I wrote in my book, Xenogenesis. What they're doing is taking third-party DNA sequences, hence xenogenesis just means the addition of additional helix to the double helix, creating a triple helix, in other words, a stand, and creating literally new life forms. Now, when I first wrote that in Genetic Armageddon 15 years ago, people just couldn't handle it. But now we're right there where, guess what? The lie that people are being told is biological enhancements are one thing, but when you combine them with robotics, you're going to get basically an Uberman, which Nietzsche talked about, and which the Nazis were absolutely looking for. The word Ubermensch literally means supermen. So when DARPA went forward with its super soldier program and basically started integrating specific gene traits from animals, i.e. eagle vision, i.e. regenerative processes of a salamander, i.e. all of the different things. It was just like, this was a comic book series coming out into real time. And again, because I've been so far ahead, it's just like this, ladies and gentlemen. The bottom line, I used to say that all the time, David, and people would send me email, don't use that, you're overusing. No, the bottom line means when you cut through all the crap, when you cut through all the haze, all the fog, and all of the misdirection, the bottom line is there is a supernatural force called the devil, which the Luciferians worship, that are trying to kill off every man, woman, and child. And what they're promising is eternal life, and they're promising supernatural and the ability to basically live forever and have to deal with nothing, with super intelligence. It's kind of like Animal Farm on steroids.
Absolutely.
Everybody is equal.
Well, actually, Steve, it's kind of like Genesis, where the serpent promised that with this knowledge, you're going to be able to live forever. You know, you're not going to ever die. Thank you so much for joining us at stevequayle.com. Check out his website. We'll be right back. In the next hour, we're going to talk to
From the City of Angels near the Pacific Ocean, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Norrie, and welcome to Coast AM. Next hour, Giants and Little People with Stephen Quayle. Here's what's happening. A power outage hit the White House and much of the Washington area on Tuesday. Snarling trains, emptying museums, cutting electricity to government buildings in the U.S. Capitol for hours. The Justice Department and State Department were among thousands of customers affected, along with the University of Maryland and some World Bank offices. The power company, Pepco Holdings, said the outage stemmed from a dip in voltage because of a transmission line trouble. The Department of Homeland Security said no indication the outages had been caused by any malicious activity. If that wasn't enough, Russian hackers behind the damaging cyber intrusion of the State Department in recent months apparently used that perch to penetrate sensitive parts of the White House computer system. Now, while the White House has said the breach only affected an unclassified system, that description belies the seriousness of the intrusion. Let's check in with Lauren Weinstein, our resident expert here. It's getting a little dangerous to use a computer, Lauren.
Well, I think that the difference between unclassified systems and classified systems is a really important one here, because what's really happened is, as there have been more hack attacks, and whether these are really from Russia or whether they're from the proverbial 13-year-old in the basement in Cincinnati, it's still a real problem. But I think what's happened is government officials have been learning, as have many of us, that if you're going to have information that is sensitive of any kind, you don't want to put it on systems that are poorly secured. So it's become clear that more and more the important information has been moved over to classified systems and classified networks, including information that otherwise might have been kept on unclassified systems, just for the added security. And the classified networks really are more secure. On the other hand, there's no excuse for sloppiness.
That's right.
And even the machines that you have that are unclassified, that are doing more mundane White House and Office of the President sorts of things, you want to be properly secured. And these sort of stories, just don't inspire confidence generally. We can certainly agree on that.
Well, Lauren, what happens one day if a rogue group breaks into a Defense Department computer system and launches nukes or something like that?
They can't do it.
Are you sure? Promise?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't have access to classified information about this. But what is even known publicly about the launch code systems and launch code protections? I mean, we've all seen the movies. We've seen Dr. Strangelove.
Oh yeah.
And we've seen
War Games.
Failsafe and War Games, right? All these movies. But the people who designed the systems, the launch control systems, and the systems that control the arming of nuclear weapons and things like that are pretty smart. And those are the crown jewels, really, of our defense system. Now, is it impossible for something to happen? No, nothing's impossible. But I worry a lot more actually about physical failures rather than cyber failures, because a lot of these systems that are the most sensitive in terms of what you're talking about there aren't even really connected to the public internet. On the other hand, we still have to worry about somebody stealing nuclear weapons.
That's right.
We have to worry a lot about all that loose fissile material that's floating around that terrorists could use to build even a crude nuclear bomb or a dirty bomb. Those are things that can definitely happen, and probably will happen sooner or later. And we can think a lot about these cyber attacks and things, and that gets a lot of money for the cyber companies and for the government agencies that are protecting against cyber intrusions, supposedly. But I worry a lot more about the low-tech ways that we could get into real trouble with nuclear weapons and things with terrorists, because it's much more likely that it'll happen that way than from a computer keyboard.
You got that right. Lauren, I don't know what we'd do without you. Thank you so much. In California, water authorities are using a new tool in a major effort to crack down on people and businesses wasting water in light of new water restrictions issued by Governor Jerry Brown to fight the incredible drought here. The Long Beach Water Department says, for example, sprinklers at a McDonald's restaurant went on for 45 minutes at a time, twice a night, for an undefined number of nights. So what are they going to do to fight this? They're putting in smart meters all over the place. They will know when you turn on the faucet, take a shower, go to the restroom, and then they will fine you $500 a day if you go over the limit. And a federal appeals court is asking the Obama administration to explain why the government should be allowed to keep secret its plan to shutter mobile phone service during critical emergencies. That's right. If something drastic happens, the government wants the right to shut off your phone. The Department of Homeland Security came up with a plan known as Standing Operating Procedure 303 after cell phones were used to detonate explosives targeting a London public transportation system. This is the digital age, and it spells out a unified voluntary process for the orderly shutdown and restoration, they say, of wireless services during critical emergencies, such as the threat of radio-activated improvised explosive devices. Man, this is coming at us way too much. Congressional critics of the Iran nuclear deal are worried that Washington and Iran can't even agree on what's in the accord that they struck last week because both governments are sending out fact sheets that are different. What the heck's going on? Let's check in with the online columnist, Dr. John Curtis. John, I don't know if this is ever going to get done.
Well, I think if it's up to the GOP, it's certainly, we're getting a little too close with Rand Paul announcing today that the conciliatory mood over regarding anything that President Obama does, including any treaties or agreements, this nuke thing that deal with Iran out of Lausanne, the opposition to it by the GOP is largely to humiliate the president. I think on balance, I think most people agree that it's a good thing to have some agreement that involves intrusive inspection in Iran's nuclear facilities than to not have it. So it's going to be a complicated mess from here on. And Bob Corker, the Senate Foreign Relations Chairman, has a new bill out that if it passes, it would put the Senate in charge of when they would re-implement some kind of sanctions on Iran, which would essentially kill this deal. So there's a lot of back and forth and political maneuvering going on right now.
OnlineColumnist.com, that's how you can track Dr. John Curtis. Scientists have for the very first time detected small amounts of radioactivity from the 2011 Fukushima reactor accident in Japan in a seawater sample taken from the shoreline of North America. Radioactivity, of course, can be dangerous, and monitoring the oceans is critical, according to a marine chemist. Very sad story here out of Maryland. Accidental carbon monoxide poisoning killed a single father and his 7 children in their one-story Maryland Eastern Shore home. Lloyd Edwards says his stepson, 36-year-old Rodney Todd, had bought a generator after the power was shut off to the home in Princess Anne because he wasn't able to pay. Carbon monoxide poisoning killed them all. Smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, and they're combined these days, they are not expensive. This is what they sound like, by the way. They go off.
Warning, evacuate carbon monoxide in basement.
That's what you hear. It wakes you up. Every house should have one or several of them all over the place. Put one by the furnace. Put one where you sleep. Just be safe. About 80,000 people could die if there was a widespread outbreak of an antibiotic-resistant blood infection, according to a government document. Geez, the National Register of Civil Emergencies says an outbreak could be expected to hit 2,000 people and that 2 in 5 might die. The documents say that high numbers of deaths could also be predicted from other forms of resistant infection.
I started singing Bye Bye Miss American Pie.
Yep, The original manuscript of Don McLean's American Pie, guess what it sold for? $1.2 million. I bet that's more than the song made when it came out. Sold at a New York auction. They thought it could have fetched $1.5 million. Amazing. One of our stories in our highlight reel at coasttocoastam.com, a mysterious ring of fire has been spotted in space thanks to Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. The ring, located 12 billion light years away, is an illusion created by the alignment of two distant galaxies. Up next, we talk about the spirit of alchemy. Karen Dahlman joins us. She's the queen of the Ouija board. She's next on Coast to Coast AM. What did that guy just say? Couldn't hear him. He was talking too fast. Karen Dahlman with us, author of Spirits of the Ouija, believes that life is meant to be joyful. And I like that attitude. She's got her new work called The Spirit of Alchemy. It's part of her trilogy series. Karen, welcome back.
Hey, George. Thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
My pleasure. I have coined the phrase, you are the queen of the Ouija board.
That's fine. I'll take it. And this book does talk about the king and queen and sacred marriage, so you're right on line by saying that.
Now, this is the third of your three books. The other two, of course, one was called The Spirit of Creativity, The Spirit of the Ouija. They all mesh together, though, don't they?
Well, yes. And how they mesh together is the communication that I continue to have and have had for over 42 years now with my spirit friends from the other side and other dimensions. So they mesh by the fact that they have profound information to share, and that I share this within the books. Now, the first book is really about tapping into your own creative principle, your own creative essence, and begin to craft the life of your dreams. Where the second book, as you know, we spoke a lot about it in the past, is really about how I did this, how I worked with the Ouija board for positive benefits and gains and personal development. And this third book takes it to a whole other level. This is what I call alchemical Ouija, esoteric Ouija, advanced Ouija. This goes into the depths of the esoteric teachings of the alchemists, the great alchemists of the Middle Ages and Medieval Ages, and way back beyond that. And it goes really into how to work with what's natural, the seen and the unseen, to transform base, the dross of your life, or base metals, into gold or golden opportunities for your life. So we really get into some advanced topics here with this third book of the trilogy series.
When I was a kid, I used to think alchemy was merely someone who was trying to create gold. And then, of course, as I got a little bit more into this sacred teachings, I began to realize it's far more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You know, the alchemy you're talking about is known as metachemistry. And that really was the whole idea of applying processes and constituents to base metals. And it was following really the natural laws that everything follows in the universe. And they accelerated basically this process that was natural in nature. The type of alchemy I'm really discussing here is the hermetic or philosophical alchemy, which deals with personal transformation. It's when the essence of a person as a human sees their regular self being transformed into more of one's divine essence. So this whole book is about really looking at life not as random events that are just strung along by each other, but truly as everything has a purpose and a meaning. Allow these events to unfold within your life and really understand that there's a synchronicity that's happening beneath all this, a blueprint to all this. We can call that the sacred science, if you will. But I really want to help people to look at their life as a process of alchemy, that they really have the ability to work with these forces, the seen and the unseen, as the alchemists did, and many great mystery traditions of the past have done, to be able to influence their life for the best, for the better, and to make changes in the world. And so that's what the premise of this whole book really gets into, that type of philosophical, hermetic type of alchemy.
Karen, Tom and I were at the dinner tonight, and we almost had to break up a fight between a manager and some customers who were there. I'm not going to get into why they were fighting, but people seem to be whacked out these days. I mean, they truly seem to be uptight and upset about the slightest thing. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I have noticed that. I mean, there's so much change going on. The one thing George, we can count on in our life and in the world is change. It is a constant. And with all this change that's abound, with the stock market, with the economy, with the world, with ISIS, with all these weather, all this stuff going on that you talk about in your show, that you're informing people about, really starts to put people on edge when there's not a way to really understand it or to even grasp it. And a lot of these things change so quickly and rapidly, it's forcing us to change. Now, if we can learn to see it the other way around and learn to see the change within ourselves first as an effect that's creating what's out here, that's what the alchemists did. They understood what was going on internally, that they knew they could also affect what was going on externally, as opposed to being reactive to what's going on around them. Yeah, I see this all the time. You see it, of course, George, in L.A. traffic. There's so much drama.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Is right on the roads in L.A. There's so much drama, and you hear these horrible stories. People are on edge.
They're just
uptight. Power. That's we've given away our power, and it's time to, move with the change, to look at the change, to embrace the change, and see what we can do internally to work with it. It's not an external reactive thing; it's an internal thing. We all have to kind of sweep our own back doorstep. We have to sweep our own porches. We can't clean the whole world, but if we start here with ourselves, the whole world will end up being clean.
We're with Karen Dahlman. This is the third of her series of books. This one is called The Spirit of Alchemy. Why is it that you think the Ouija board is a very useful tool and instrument, and so many people, including me, think it's a portal, a doorway to evil?
Well, it is what you believe about it, and I've always been real firm about that. You get what you harbor within, and you get what you believe. And so our beliefs will bring that towards us. I mean, as we've discussed before, it's truly a neutral device. It's wood, it's cardboard, or in my case, mine's masonite that I use the most. It's just a neutral tool, and as we discussed before, we don't need that tool. And in fact, I don't always use the board to get my messages from my spirit friends. Just that I've been pretty good in using this tool, so I still use it. I see the work that I do with this board and the teachings that I've learned from this work, and it's not just from the board, but it's from the interactions with the other dimensions. I find that the board can be sometimes an easier, quicker way to access these realms. It can be a starting point. A lot of the great teachers in the past of esoteric and spiritual truths, such as Jane Roberts, Betty White, some of the from the earlier century, Pearl Currens, they've used this device and they moved beyond it as well. But it was a way for them to be in touch with other dimensions. And so I see it very much that way. It is like a cosmic phone. You dial up, you tune in, and you've got to know what you're doing, George. You really do. I mean, it gets this bad rap because people mess around with it, sure, the board, or even just any kind of spiritual work, whether it's divination, tarot reading, and not knowing what they're doing. And so through trial and error and many, many years of doing this, I've fine-tuned it to a place where I can sit down and write the right spirits and friends of mine that I've been communicating with over, some of these have been my friends for like almost 25 years now, will communicate back with me. It's a consistent communication we've had over many years that makes it real, that makes it work, that makes it come out with profound sayings and advice and suggestions and ideas. And so this book, The Spirit of Alchemy, Secret Teachings of the Sacred Union, was really born out of some of my earlier work with the board. And it really, the way I work with the board now, it's at a level of trying to do nothing more than to find my own greatness within and others' greatness within. It's about unlocking that potential within ourselves so we don't have to be reactive to the world at large. The world at large is basically an illusion to the alchemist, and what it's really comprised of is what they are within and what they believe in terms of their own divine essence. And that's what you end up getting. So if you can tap into this divine essence of yourself, source, higher self, call it as you will, you'll find that you'll start attracting that outside of yourself externally. So that's what you end up getting more often than the fear that we've talked about most people find from the Ouija board. But it's not a tool for everybody, but definitely it can be used in this level and this way to really make some major changes within yourself, thus without in the world.
Karen's website, of course, linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Karen, after we take the break, we'll take some calls, but I want you to talk about how you've divided your book into the outer world, the underworld, the inner world, the upper world, and you tell me about these places, these various aspects here. In your opinion, we've only got about 30 seconds or so, are we headed down the right path?
Yeah, I think actually we are. You know, with every change, things have to be shaken up. And right now things are being shaken up. And when they shake up like this, you know, chips are going to fall. Truly, in chaos theory, there's order. And we need to remember that. There really is order, and things aren't random. And so we're being asked to transform our consciousness, our awareness, the ethers, so we can step into this new realm of being. And it's going to ask for a lot of structures and paradigms to fall away. And that's what we're seeing right now, George. The paradigms are disappearing, and we're being replaced with new ones that we're not very familiar with.
All right, we're going to come back in a moment with Karen Dahlman, the Spirit of Alchemy, and we'll take your phone calls. And also, if you've witnessed whacked out people, check in with us next on Coast to Coast AM. And next hour, Stephen Quayle joins us with his latest work called Little Creatures. The Gates of Hell are opening. So make sure you're part of that. We're with Karen Dahlman, her work, The Spirit of Alchemy. Karen, before we go to calls, let's break down what you talk about, these realms of worlds, very quickly. The outer world, underworld, inner world, upper world. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, great question. You know, the idea is that we have so many facets of ourselves that exist within these different realms. We're truly multidimensional people, truly multidimensional beings, and we forget this. And so often we just disregard parts of ourselves, and we don't think about it, we don't look at it. For example, humanity in the past, thousands of years, has really, really brushed off the whole divine feminine, the whole aspect of the sacred queen that's part of the sacred king. And without that aspect of ourselves, we're missing out on the whole part of ourselves that is more receptive, loving, caring, open, calm, respectful. And we've just pushed that away. And so what I'm saying in this the book with the different realms, I'm saying we really need to remind ourselves of these aspects of ourselves. If we want to really exist in this new transformation that's happening in the world, we really need to pull ourselves together. We need to pull our pieces back together and not shun the aspects of ourselves that's been pushed down by humanity over the eras. So I'm not just talking about the feminine, I'm talking about the imaginal realm, the unseen, our fear of the unknown, the mysterious, the darkness. We tend to think that all the boogeyman's come out of the darkness, and that's what we're afraid of. And the truth was, our ancestors of antiquity, they were not afraid of this realm. They really relished in it, in this energy, because they understood that it was where they came, from whence they came. And that's important. My whole story takes you back to these realms. So I basically call the outer realm, the outer world, our life right now. And then all of a sudden we have an epiphany or an awakening or something transforms in our life. And it's not always happy. It could be something that forces us to look at a descent into our inner world and underworld, and that could be like death, divorce, destruction, deception, or it could be of our own choice through delight and our desire. I call those the 6 big D's of descent. But there's a reason why we have to look at ourselves. We're all forced to do this at some time in our life. I'm saying let's get on that journey now because the world's changing and we're reacting too much to what's out there, and let's find our own inner locus of control. So we go down into the depths of ourselves. And this is a real place within us. It's a real place within the unseen multidimensional realms, as my spirit friends always teach me. As we go into these places within ourselves, we begin to reclaim those parts that we repressed, the shadow side, our inner demons. And we begin to uncover the inner daemons, the helpers that are really there. And it's a real thing that happens. And as we begin to work with this underworld and the inner world way and come to know these aspects of ourselves, it's like we're regathering these powerful pieces of us that once maybe helped us, protect us, or did whatever it could to keep us in line, but now it's time to be strong in ourselves again. So we bring back that divine feminine, we bring her back into our heart, we reclaim that imaginal part of us that was a child that maybe had imaginary playmates, maybe saw spirits. I mean, my book is full of these visitations.
And we all have that as kids.
We all have done that, right. And it's time now to reclaim it because that's our key back into our empowerment so we can live in these changing times. We do it from within. We don't do it again, as we discussed, through the LA traffic and be reactive. We do it from our own internal locus of control. And we do it by going back and being in touch with these realms of ourselves. which are truly real, energetic vibrations. And as we do that, we start to transform the dross of our life into golden opportunities for growth and inspiration. So that's the whole idea of this alchemical transformation that I talk about in this book.
Can everybody make that transformation?
They will make it whether they want to or not. I'm saying this is one way to maybe help yourself through it and enjoy the journey. I mean, again, life is meant to be joyful. I truly believe that. My spirit friends remind me of that almost every session when I communicate with them. Life is meant to be enjoyed. And if you enjoy your life and you vibrate at that frequency, you continue to spiral up and out of these other realms into more of an upper realm, which is really your feet on the ground. It's really your divine self. And you start bringing together all the paradoxes of duality that we live within. Bad, good, evil, terrible, all these things that we talk about, that, you know, the fear of the Ouija, it's good, it's bad, all these things. It's not just, it's to say that within us we hold all these fears and we hold all these opportunities. And if we can bring them together, we can transmute them and move them from these base metals into ways to see our life differently, so we are more empowered. But, you know, this is going to happen one way or the other. You'll be forced to do it, or you can start doing it on your own. And when you do it, you'll find that your life will change. We have the ability to create an incredible life right here, right now, for ourselves, in the moment of now, as we begin to embody all these facets of ourselves. But we have to pull ourselves back together. And when we do that, we will see ourselves in our worlds that have transformed. This is what we're being forced to do, George, right now. I really believe, you know, at the whole Mayan calendar thing, and it was just a shift in consciousness. And this is what I'm talking about. This is a shift in consciousness we must make internally. But we'll be forced to do it, or we can do it on our own.
Okay, let's take some calls now. Let's go to Buck in Alaska, west of the Rockies. Hey, Buck. Thanks for calling.
Oh, hey, George. It's an honor to talk to you. I've been listening to you since I was just a young boy out in my dad's fishing boat.
I love it.
Well, I called in because you were talking about if you've seen any whacked-out people, and I just wanted to mention what's been going on up here in Anchorage.
Okay.
We had a total of 7 murders last year, and just in these first couple months, we're already up to at least 10 murders.
Jeez, already? We're only into 4 months. My God.
Yeah, and I've just noticed it going out in the last couple of years. People just, like you said, are really on edge.
And we don't know why. Any guess, Buck, what's happening out that way?
I don't know if it's just social media and this generation of people. It seems like they're always kind of looking inwards, you know, at themselves and not really looking outwards.
Karen, let's go back to you on that. And, Buck, thanks for the call. I mean, here's an example. 7 murders last year in that area. Already this year, 10.
10.
Already.
We're barely scratching the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second. Yeah, it's really, we're seeing this everywhere. And I do think it's a statement, not maybe social media somewhat, but I think it's really more, again, a statement at large that there's things shifting within us, within the psyche. Let's call it the collective unconscious of humanity. And as things shift, and they have to fall apart. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing. And people don't know how to handle these changes. And the changes are real. Again, it's like the economy's falling apart. People are losing their jobs. There's a lot of inclement weather that's just destroying aspects of our country. And we got the drought going on. We got all these flooding. We got all these cold. We got, you know, people that are dying because they're trying to keep their house warm and they end up suffocating. And, you know, there's so much going on, and we don't know how to deal with this. And so it is important to get that locus of control within yourself. And by doing that, it's not really about looking at yourself within. That's all you're focused on. You're doing it so you can be better out here in the world as you interact with others. That's what makes everything work a little easier, because people are going under such stress right now. And any bit of something that could be helpful to another, that really makes all the difference. And we can do that when we get back into our place of empowerment.
Well, we sure can. What do you mean by spiraling? You make reference to it a lot in your book.
Yeah, spiraling, this is the concept. In our life, we tend to shift up, shift down, shift out, shift in. And the idea is, everything moves really in circles. And one of the basic blueprints of the universe and all of life form is this wonderful spiral. And it's known in the Fibonacci series, it's known as different terms. But you'll see it in pine cones and antlers and all kinds of natural things that are of this earth are made, or I should say they're at the very basic levels, they're in a spiral shape. And so I use the whole image of the spiral as a way to circle around, come back to the beginning, and start anew, but now a degree or two higher. As spiraling up, you begin to understand more. Spiraling in, you might begin to look at more. You might spiral out. We contract in our life. We go within, and then we expand back out. And that is how life works. Nothing is stationary. Everything is constantly moving, and it moves in these like circular patterns. And if you could think of it that way, everything is evolutionary, and everything is always growth. And instead of seeing things as a time, like a line, like a time-space continuum, if we look at it more in spirals, even our galaxy is in the shape of a spiral, this little arm sticking out. Everything kind of...
We've got a picture of a merging of a couple galaxies on our coasttocoastam.com website. Same thing. It's a nice spiral.
That's the blueprint. And so I'm saying, try to think of life that way, that instead of a straight line, because it'll help you go through this transformation. It's not like you go from point A to point Z. It's kind of like a labyrinth. It might wind back in and might wind back out. But if you're aware of that, you're not going to be panicked so much when life does go, sometimes it feels like in circles. Know that every single direction you go, whether you think you made a bad choice or not, is always towards the evolution of yourself, of the soul. It's always in a positive way, and that's just the law of nature. It's always towards this growth. And yet growth in it has decay and decay and what's the word I'm trying to think of? Stagnation. We get that, and we have a rebirth that comes. But if you see it as a spiral, it allows you to see it a little bit different, so life isn't so static.
Let's go to Cleveland. Bob's with us, first-time caller. Bob, go for it.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Bob.
How are you?
Good.
Good, yeah. I bought some property in rural Ohio, and we were doing some work out there. We were digging maybe like a 2-foot for a tablet. Had the
Hey, Bob, we're gonna have to get a better connection with you, if you would. That's kind of breaking up. Darn, sounds like he was on his way to a good story too, Karen.
I couldn't hear it. I know, it was terrible.
Chopping up too. But we're with Karen Dahlman. We're going to take your calls with what's left of this hour as we talk about, of course, strange people acting in very weird moods, the spirit of alchemy. Why is it, Karen, does it seem that when this happens, it happens to the masses? Something's affecting the masses all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, we're all human, and we're all the same collective unconscious. We're all the same psyche. There's this matrix, let's call it a matrix of energy, that we're all tapped into, and it's universal. And so these patterns, we can talk about the spirals, we can talk about the archetypes, but there's basic patterns that we're all influenced by. And so it's kind of like the 100th monkey or the Kinke's 100th monkey syndrome. They talked about the monkeys washing their coconuts in the water and how they all started doing it after a while when they were on different islands and separated from each other. We work very similarly. We can look at that kind of as it's more of a metaphor, but it's the idea that we're all in this together. We're all part of the same web of life. We're all of source. We're all connected. This book that I wrote really talks about this interconnection, and when we start to understand this interconnection, we can actually start encouraging and creating synchronistic events where more things seem to happen, where the stars feel like they're aligned. And what we're seeing right now is that the stars are aligned in probably not the best way, because it feels that way to us. We're seeing so much change. But I'm going to beg to differ that change is at the end, not always, we can't see it when we're in it, but it definitely has a new beginning for us, a new rung on that spiral. So I'm really encouraging people to start to rethink and relook at some of these things. But I also know, too, when we're in the moment of this upheaval, which it feels like, and we're hearing this from people all over, it's hard to find that. But we're being asked to think about these thoughts. Really, we are. We're being asked to change. And we're all tapped into that same ether, that same consciousness that's making us change. So that's why we're all feeling it. We're all getting the same kind of energy coming at us.
You don't think Big Brother is doing anything, do you? With all these chemtrails?
I think there's a lot of forces from all different angles, George. And to put your finger on one, you really can't. But that's all part of the picture. That's all part of the plan, and not that it's right. It's just part of the plan. And so what we can do, all we really can do, and you talk about on the show with all of your great guests, is, try to prepare the best you can. Learn from the different people that are talking about it. Learn from yourself. Go out there and read about what's going on, but don't get in a fear-based place. And what the alchemists taught was that although things look like they're in upheaval, falling apart, I mean, they were greatly tortured and maimed and put underground from what they believed and talked about. They believed in the divinity found within themselves as they aspired to higher levels on the spiral I'm talking about. But it's important, what we can do is really think like the alchemist and think that, you know what, sometimes out there what we see is not really what's there. And it can be an illusion, but we have to learn to understand how to see it that way.
Ryan.
Because a lot of things are thrown at us that aren't real.
We go to Oregon now. Ryan's with us. Hello there, Ryan. Go ahead, sir.
Like I said, I was just calling to ask if there was any way I could talk to my loved ones that have passed on through a Ouija board.
Ooh. Now, that's an interesting question, Karen.
Well, it sure is. George, you want to answer that one?
No, I'll let you. You're the queen of Ouija boards.
Right, okay. Absolutely, yes. I do it all the time. Although I will say this, that's something that people ask me to do when I have my open message circles. However...
Can he do it? Does he need someone like you, or can he do it?
Well, listen, I'm not here to encourage Ouija board, but I am here to say there's many ways you can talk to your loved ones. And I want to say this, too. They talk to you all the time. We have to learn to be open. This is part of seeing what's kind of behind the veil and seeing the seen and the unseen and being open to the mysterious, because truly they are right here with us. It's so easy. They're just like a spiral rung away. Again, it's not a line continuum. It's like this one little spiral away they are, and it's like another dimension. And they're here with you, and you may get a smell. You may get a sensation. You may get an incredible dream. You may see something on a license plate or a billboard that reminds you of your loved one. You may hear a song on the radio. All of this is synchronistic. All of this is ways that the unseen communicates to us. And you don't need a Ouija board, although that's what I use sometimes, but I go beyond that. I mean, I use dreams and lucid dreaming and altered states of awareness and meditation. There's many ways to do it. But I would say for you, the best way to do it is to really try to sit just silently and just ask, what is it that you want to hear from them? What can they tell you? How are they? And just allow what comes into your mind. It'll be a feeling, a sensation. It might be something in your body. It might be a thought. It might be a memory. And just allow that to move through you. And after time, you'll start to get more of these experiences. It really is, George, simple to be in touch with what's beyond this veil that we all think it doesn't. We just don't think we can get to it. It's right here with us. That's what this book helps you do, to be right there with this other side, this unseen aspect, and to reclaim it, and to know that really, truly is where we came from.
All right, Ryan, sorry for your loss.
That's terrible.
It's not easy to have to go through
not
something
easy at all.
like that.
We all know this.
Karen, in the waning moments here, would you get out your website for everybody, please?
Would love to. You can go to Karen A. Dahlman, DAHLMAN.com, or Creative Visions Publications, those are two plural words, .com. And you can find everything that's coming up, what I'm working on, my latest books, my next book. And then also, we've got a big conference at the end of the month. May I talk about that a little bit?
You've got called OuijaCon, don't you?
OuijaCon, thank you. Yes, OuijaCon. And we invite everybody out.
Go at your own risk, everyone. I'm kidding here.
Well, listen, it's going to be a great time. You've got some incredible speakers. Everybody's been on Coast to Coast with George before. That'll be there. And we're going to be discussing everything about Ouija and the communication with spirits. And come out. It's April 23rd to 25th in Baltimore, Maryland. We still have some tickets available. You can go to my website. I have a link directly to go buy your ticket. I'll be there. A lot of your favorite guests in the show will be there talking about everything, good, bad, the ugly, and in between about Ouija. So it's a great time. Come out. Please visit us.
I love it. All right, Karen.
George was there.
You take care of yourself. Yeah, I would have been there, but I'm going to be in San Mateo at the a New Living Expo conference on that weekend. Very, very busy April. Up next, Stephen Quayle joins us with his latest work on little creatures. The gates of hell are opening. Well, our friend Stephen Quayle back with us. In his work in Little Creatures, he looks at legends and fairy tales surrounding little creatures and reveals how these tales provide clues, secrets that can be assembled like a jigsaw puzzle and give you an amazing picture of our past, of these supernatural creatures. Up next, Stephen Quayle with me on Coast to Coast AM. Well, you know him, Stephen Quayle, author of the primer for Understanding Bioterrorism called Breathe No Evil. And after that, of course, things went through the roof. Stephen continues to shout from those rooftops, telling us about the lack of civil defense and to be prepared. He's written several other books, too, including Genesis 6 Giants. We're talking about little creatures. The gates of hell are opening. Stephen, welcome back.
Hi, George. Good morning to everyone listening out there in the Coast family. And, boy, we've got some stuff to cover tonight.
This is amazing. I was doing some research into your work. Tell me, how you're the guy who came from giants, now little creatures. Tell me about this.
Well, the more I got into giants, and we'll talk about that a little later on in the show, the fascination with the little people or the hidden people or the wee folk, going by as many as 400 different names throughout the world, it was astonishing to me that the little creatures were always found at least in the same general vicinity of history and mythology. So I decided that, they're popping up too many places in history. We had to deal with them. Now, it's interesting because I sent to Lisa Lyons, your producer, the story, and I think she sent it to you, too, that you saw the story about in Iceland, respect the elves or else.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is something in the Guardian that happened, the newspaper, maybe a couple days ago, maybe a week ago. But it says if you want to lay a road, build a house, or construct a dam in Iceland, there's one influential group you have to clear with first, the elves. Now, these people are dead serious. But what's interesting, George, is the mythology and the legends from around the world. There is a phenomenon that obviously, as I write about aliens and fallen angels, the sexual corruption of the human race, when we're dealing with the fairy tales of old, whether they're the Grimm's fairy tales, 211 of them by 1857, the fascinating thing is they have so many parallels to alien abduction, especially of women, of children, of being raped, of having children switched, if you will, in the cribs or in the nurseries. The modern-day phenomenon of movie stars talking about having sex with demons, incubus in the form of a male entity, succubus in the form of a female entity. So it was my understanding and undertaking to try and put this stuff together in history, and out of that came the book, Little Creatures, The Gates of Hell Are Opening, and my mind was blown. By the way, this is not for children, okay?
No, not at all.
I want to make that clear. This is not for children, because when you look at this, it's not the Disney-like characters. Those are usually, I would say, the putting the best foot forward on some of the most gruesome stories in history. So from the Hawaiian Islands, when you've got the Menhune, Narepan in Thailand, Pedro the Mountain Mummy in Wyoming, the Ant People and the Hopi legends, one can't get away from that, even to the jinn in the Middle East and the Alduais, the terror that comes by night, the female succubus, basically that's where the term man-eater came from. And a lot of our words people don't understand are directly related to these creatures. It's my contention now that truly the gates of hell are opening, have opened, and the supernatural phenomenon that people are experiencing is only getting worse.
And the people who are experiencing this, it scares the living daylights out of them, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it's fascinating because this is not something that's just unique to the United States. It's not unique to those who watch science fiction movies. When the Psalm 91 says the terror that comes by night, this is literally people are being terrorized. And one of the things that is interesting is how many people are reporting to me, again from all over the world, a night paralysis, literally being scared to the point of totally paralyzed. And so there are things happening. Now, again, the gates of hell is an interesting concept. A gate either holds something back or allows something through. And as we're dealing with CERN now and stargates, by the way, another word for stargate, ancient Hebrews, as the word star and messenger or angel were the same things. They were interchangeable. So the entities that are being associated with CERN, it's fascinating. There was a story, 2 days ago, that the scientists have proposed that if the aliens show up, they're going to be giants. Did you see that one?
Yes, I sure did.
So, I think it was Barry Kamish who wrote about giants in the Holy Land a number of years ago, maybe a decade ago, but most people don't know this. You can go on a search engine and look it up. But when the saucers were landing in, or the ships were landing in Israel, some of these things were 9 feet tall. So we go from tall to small. Now, here's what's interesting. They who control the past determine the future. And as I got into this more and more, and absolutely had I had some people in the field that went out to Sardinia in search of giants, but again, the legends of the little people showed up. What was fascinating, George, is it was always someone from a organized way, either the Roman Catholic Church or what they referred to over there, same as we do here, spooks, that was always there under any finds of giants, any finds of little people. And my team that actually went over there, they were basically tracked in real time. It was almost like they said a cheap spy novel, the guy sitting in the corner in Sardinia. And for the record, Sardinians have a great tie-in with the legend of Atlantis. So we're talking tonight about the supernatural coming into our present reality and people responding. And it's my contention, as you've had me on your show for these years, almost going on a decade, is that we're seeing more and more of the things that have been hidden brought to light. And it's not a good thing because, again, when I say it's not a good thing, is that what you have in common with whether you're dealing with the little creatures or the tricksters or the goblins or the brownie sprites, jinn or whatever, you're dealing with some very malevolent entities. And I want to give someone a quote. This was fascinating because I found this. It's about a 200-year-old quote, and this is quoting a fairy. Now, people have got to understand that some of the most famous authors in history believed in them. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Sir Walter Scott, and Robert Louis Stevenson made the statement that it was a brownie, a hidden folk, a wee folk, that dictated to him the plot to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. 99% of the people probably never would have believed that. But here's the statement. God be between me and every fairy, every ill wish and every druidry. Today is Thursday on sea and land. Not the seed of Adam are we, nor is Adam our father, but of the seed of the proud angel driven forth from heaven. So you've got this parallel dimension. You've got the claim that these little entities, and again, they're worldwide, whether we're in Australia, whether we're in the Middle East, whether we're in the frozen north, the deep Patagonian peninsula, if you will, of South America. The common denominator is this, is that they were always found in respect to their harassing of mankind, their sexual exploitation of mankind, and then the things that we have come to know as nightmares, dreams, filthy dreams. And it's fascinating because even in the scripture, people don't understand that when the Apostle Paul in the Bible, New Testament, is talking about seducing spirits, he's not talking about a metaphor for intellectual, let's say this, thought captivation. He was talking about literal entities. So, it's fascinating to me that one thing led to another, and so now we're talking tonight on Coast about little creatures, and the amount of information out there is staggering.
How little are they, Stephen?
Well, I mean, when you talk about the Hopis and the ant people, they're talking about people the size of ants. I think a good portrayal that people might relate to is in Spielberg, one of the Men in Black movies. You remember all the little creatures that were in the guy's head?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because obviously Steven Spielberg, I'm told from people who have been interviewed by him that, and again, I don't know him nor have I talked to him, but he's very up on alien abductions. He's very up on a lot of the myths and legends. But the little people, when you're dealing with Pedro the Mountain Mummy, you're dealing with six-inch Naripan to Pedro the Mountain Mummy. Boy, that's a hard one for me to say right now. Mountain Mummy at 12 inches. And we're talking now about fascinating events. And in Little Creatures, one nice thing about this, I think I've got about 165 illustrations. And even to the Peruvian, if you will, some of these things are absolutely, they imagine a 12-inch or even a 3-inch alien. You and I did a show, 7 or 8 years ago on the little alien found in the Atacama Desert.
Yes,
You remember that?
I remember. Great show.
Yeah, that was a great show. And fascinatingly enough, as you and I are on the air tonight, and again, for the record, it's April 8th, the Atacama Desert just had the biggest rainstorm, I believe, in their history. And it's my contention that a lot of stuff after the flood, I mean, it's a raging, it looks like a tsunami inland, and people want to see it. I posted it on my website, stevequayle.com. But if you remember, George, that little alien was less than 6 inches, actually,
right.
Maybe 4 inches. So when we broke that story, and you and I did break that story, it's now recirculating, 10 years later. But it's fascinating because they tried to disprove it. They took X-rays, they took DNA samples, and just like everything else, it's not related to the human genome. And no offense, but that's a big duh. The thing is that we're now seeing the revelations of the Yeti woman. You probably saw that the other day.
Mm-hmm.
We were told for so many years that Neanderthal was one of our ancestors, only to find out that isn't the case at all. So when we're talking about little creatures, we're talking about interesting anomalies that they all seem to possess. Number one, they can appear and disappear as almost as going through, if you will, a dimensional gate. They come out of rocks, and that's a fascinating subject because, again, in all of the research that I've been doing these years, over actually decades now, the point being is that they can change their DNA and their form to come in and out. So in essence, they're able to go through different, if you will, dimensions of matter. So we're seeing now, and people are talking about this all over the world, we're just getting a grasp on so many of the ancient themes. And by the way, all of our ancestors weren't a bunch of cave-dwelling Neanderthals that went around beating their women on heads with clubs. I think that's the most demeaning stereotype because, again, I maintain, as you know, that the fallen angels, which I'd like to clear up some words tonight. The Nephilim are fallen angels, and the fallen angels in the Book of Giants, which are the Dead Sea Scrolls, some of the Qumran scrolls, talk about literally the fallen angels. Obviously, Zachariah Sitchin called them the Anunnaki. People referred to them as aliens, but the fallen angels came and not only polluted the human genome, but they polluted the animal genome too. In essence, they corrupted everything genetically. Fallen angels can transform themselves. They can become shapeshifters. And the Native American legends, which you and I have talked about, we did a show on my book, True Legends, are fascinating. So what's happened, George, is all these things are coming full circle now. And I think this is like the missing puzzle piece of the little creatures. And they're, if you will, almost the attendant-like position in history that they relate to giants over.
Are any of these creatures from planet Earth originally? It sounds like they're either all from an extraterrestrial race, other dimensions, but were any of them naturally born here?
From what I can understand, no. And I would say extra-dimensional more than extraterrestrial.
Okay.
And again, because the way that, if you notice, Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jump over the candlestick, some of the nursery rhymes we've known, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your long hair, Snow White. And by the way, I would say this, that, again, these are not children's stories. And the Grimm's fairy tales, they were originally put out for children, but obviously the parents said, look, this is not for kids to be reading back.
How about Ring Around the Rosie? You know, all the kids start playing that, and that's about the Black Plague, wasn't it, when they all died?
It was, and the Pied Piper. You know, I mean, we're talking about some very dark issues. And, you know, here's the thing. We're now seeing, if you will, a prevalence throughout the world of preternatural, meaning above natural or supernatural events. There's more spirals opening up. And by the way, when people see spirals in Native American legends and in Aboriginal legends, whenever you would see a spiral on a petroglyph or a stone carving or rock carving, that was always indicative of a stargate. We're seeing now the stories coming out. As I was told years ago by a general in special operations that tracks down the stuff that goes bump in a night, and I'm sure he'll be listening to the show, he said, Steve, it's never what's above ground, it's what's underneath the ground. In other words, it's not what's on the Giza Plateau, it's underneath the Giza Plateau. And we're just seeing now that some of the hugest pyramids in the world are in Bosnia. They're in Romania, and there are so many fascinating stories of the little people associated. So what I'm saying tonight simply is this, is that what most people have never seen before, and I haven't, and no one has done it. I mean, there are people who've written stories of books on fairy tales, is typing it as how it relates to the alien deception and how it plays into the giant issue. And so, in talking about giants, George, after all these years of writing about giants, investigating giants, right now we've got an expedition going on for giants, not dead bones, but living ones. And that's another story, and we'll break that story with your permission on Coast when the guys get back.
Of course.
But the point is that already, because of the interest in, again, I want to make this clear, not bones, the real entities. I will just say this, certain spy agencies are working overtime to watch everything that's going on in other parts of the world right now in an expedition or two that's going on. That's all I can say. I'm not trying to be, melodramatic. I'm just saying that people really do monitor this stuff. Our Sardinia expedition, Tim Alberino and a guy named Darren and some other people went on that. Basically, they were met by very, very cautious individuals who are 50 and 60, but remember seeing the helicopters coming in and taking giant skeletons out of Sardinia that were 18 feet tall. And the fascinating that in some of those areas right now, where they literally call a certain area the Tomb of the Giant, most people don't realize that on Sardinia is one of the largest pyramids in the world. Some of the canals that were in Sardinia match, if you will, the designation of Plato and Atlantis. I don't believe that Sardinia was Atlantis, but I believe that Atlanteans, after Atlantis was destroyed, settled in Sardinia. And what's fascinating to me is you've got the same thing in Sardinia as you have in Antarctica, as you have in the Arctic, as you have in South America, as you have in Australia. Whenever this stuff turns up, if you will, it's not men in black that show up. It's sometimes men who want to make sure that the world never sees the light of that. One of my guys just encountered someone in another country who said, you must realize this. You must realize, these are his words, one of the most famous archaeologists in the world, that this is the most controlled subject in the world, and they will do anything to keep it quiet. The man who said that was terrified, and so to make a long story short, the team had to meet with him. So how does this relate to the little people? Well, it's the same story, George, because, again, wherever you have the history, the mythology, or the oral tradition of the little people, you always have, if you will, let's just call them spooks. You have people that really don't want the truth to be known. See, when you can dismiss something as just myth, fable, whatever, you can basically put it into the realm of science fiction. Oh, that's not true. That couldn't be true. That's just science fiction. Well, as you and I have talked, how much science fiction has now turned out to be fact.
Hold on, Stephen, as we come back for more, as we talk about little creatures, right here on Coast to Coast AM. And I invite you all to watch our television program Beyond Belief. If you would, you can go to this website and participate and watch it for a while at www.beyondbelief.com. It is that simple. We're going to come back in a moment with Stephen Quayle as we talk more about his latest research work, Little Creatures, next. Welcome back to Coast. Stephen Quayle with us. Stephen, these little creatures, what do they want?
It seems like, George, because of the nature of all of them in general, it seems like they derive some form of sustenance from the human sexual experience, from human body fluids, i.e. the whole alien abduction thing. And by the way, people who are recounting these, a lot of them are non-religious. This had nothing to do with even an inherent belief system. There are people that live in parts of the world that don't even have mythologies concerning this that are experiencing it. One of them is a researcher named Michael Mott, M-O-T-T, and he said, I've personally had dreams with disturbing content as a result of spontaneous awareness during sleep paralysis. He said, I've experienced this on countless occasions. One occasion I felt like I woke up in bed lying on my side and opened my eyes. I felt and saw a thin, red, leathery, bat-like wings draped over me, such as the posture of a vampire from a Hollywood movie. So what they seem to want is the same thing. Now, I want to make I didn't get to finish my thought, and I apologize, but I will finish it. Nephilim in the Old Testament, fallen angels, when they had sex with earth women, they produced the giants. 33 times in the Old Testament, the word is Rephaim. The word Nephilim, which everybody calls a giant now Nephilim, it's not really a correct term. They call demons Nephilim. That's not correct either. But when the fallen angel had sexual relationship with an earth woman and produced a giant, obviously, that giant was not just a natural entity. It had a supernatural element to it. That's how come there are people that want to claim, well, because of the Earth's gravity in those days, nothing could be that size. That just simply is not true, because even the modern systems of transportation that we use in all of our top-secret spacecraft and aircraft uses electrogravitics. The ancients knew how to overcome gravity with harmonics, in essence, harmonic levitation. So, the Nephilim are the fallen angels. The Rephaim are the giants. When the giants died, whether it's Goliath or Polyphemus, the 400-foot Cyclops, we'll get to that maybe in this later on the show. The point is that spirit, that hybrid spirit, half human, half fallen angel, became demons. Demons seek to possess. They seek to inhabit. They seek to reintroduce themselves into the human genome, and it all centers around sex. Interestingly enough, you know, it's amazing that whether you're dealing with aliens, and you and I joked on the air before, George, you know, for a good time, stop off at planet Earth. I think they made a really bad science fiction movie once called Earth Women Are Easy. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, but now someone says, well, why would you bring that up? Simply because there is an underlying tone in the, if you will, in Hollywood, to bring into a dimension, just as CERN, and we'll get to that in a minute, but the fallen angels are the Nephilim. The giants are the Rephaim. Now, why is this important to establish? Because people use the wrong terms. They assume that demons, and in the Greek, daimonizomai, it means disembodied. If something's disembodied, it had to be embodied. Jesus taught when an unclean spirit, a demon, goes out, it seeks to return to the place or the person that it got cast out of. So why is this critical now? Because what's fascinating, in the last 2 weeks, people have brought up the fact, scientists, that they could reconstitute Hitler. Did you see that story?
Mm-hmm. Sure did. Why would they want to do that?
Well, here's the deal. There is a hierarchy in evil. There is a very present pecking order in evil. And if I told you that, and I've been told by people, I couldn't know this, so I don't know this firsthand, but when you got guys that have 4 stars, and they're telling you that there's a group of individuals out there looking for the DNA of all the most evil, malevolent people in history, then that these men destroyed marvelously, very few women, by the way, but, I mean, whether you're looking for the DNA of Genghis Khan, whether you're looking for the DNA of good night, any of the famous butchers in history.
Attila the Hun.
Attila the Hun, thank you. That's the one I was struggling with. I am told that they possess those gene banks. And as people, I've maintained on your show, and we've talked about it, cloning, cloning human beings. I said, what happens if the people that you think are your elected politicians, that some of them have been actually displaced or replaced or cloned? People used to laugh and, they'd make fun, and I'd read some of the comments, but now, it's given that they're going to clone individuals, they're going to have triple parent babies. So when you talk about having, let's just say this, the most malevolent beings in the world, recorded history, when you're talking about having their DNA and being able to reconstitute them, then the demons that inhabited those people that caused them to do all those things will come back into their bodies. So basically you can call it reanimation. So in the world of hell's hierarchy, they want these individuals walking back on the earth. It's kind of like in Argentina, where in some areas in Argentina, I forget the town, they made a movie about it called The Boys of Brazil, but it has the highest prevalence of twins because supposedly Dr. Mengele of Nazi fame and his scientists went there and actually were producing, if you will, genetic alterations, and that's almost, 70 years ago now.
Yeah. He never stopped, did he?
He never stopped. And then, it was fascinating. I was told by a general, and again, I could not know this, that the fight was to get Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh's DNA from the sarcophagus that was in Iraq. And prior to the invasion, he basically told me this. He said, Steve, most of the special operations beyond the dealing with foreign governments and the introduction of advanced teams is trying to locate all of the hidden and the alien, when I say alien, hidden or alien DNA or the entities themselves to extract both the DNA and also the technology. Now, again, most people would be flabbergasted to know this, but at one of NASA's and the National Space Administration, NASA, National Aeronautic and Space Administration, the deal is that they had the Hindu scientists, and by the way, the Indian scientists are some of the brightest men in the world, and they were presenting Sanskrit texts on Vimanas. Did you see that story?
That was a great story. That's the Vimana story has always fascinated.
Right. So here you have the leading astrophysicists. You have the leading, if you will, designers of both known and unknown spacecraft, and you've got the Hindus presenting the propulsion systems, the design parameters, the control mechanisms of Vimanas, and they made it kind of, how would you say, they mocked them, but these guys are going back 4,000 and 6,000 years, so how could anybody get that kind of, if you will, blueprints for those unless they existed? So I thought that was kind of fascinating. So, you know what's fascinating, George? We're on the show tonight, and so many times we've been on the air together, and when we talk about a subject, sure enough,
something's
it shows up in the press.
Yeah, or something's happened.
Yes.
I remember when there was troop movements one night. We were on for 4 hours. Remember that one, Stephen?
Yes, sir, I do.
Oh, my gosh. Leprechauns. What's your take on leprechauns?
It's fascinating because the British Isles, whether you're dealing with London, Britain, Scotland, or Ireland, the British Isles are always filled with the leprechauns, and again, they call them the wee people. It doesn't matter what name. It's fascinating because, as you know, many of the British Isles, they had separate states or separate areas, so they're called by different names, you know, and obviously the pot of gold. The history of leprechauns is that obviously if you could catch one or you could entrap one, he would have to give you gold to let him go. And what's fascinating, whether they're leprechauns, brownies, elves, sprites, they all wore their little caps. And it was fascinating that legend would declare that without their caps, they could not achieve invisibility. Isn't that interesting?
It's fascinating.
So whether you're dealing with Smurfs and their little hats or leprechauns, I mean, I found that fascinating. This is one of those things that you set out to investigate, and you see how much cartoons have integrated this, and i.e. comic books and graphic novels now, and it's like there has been a central theme running through history, good versus evil, and it always revolves. And by the way, even the leprechaun stories can get pretty raunchy, okay? And so the point being is that in different parts of the British Isles, different parts of the world, basically the same name for different names for the same individuals.
Let me ask you about this, too. With the little creatures and babies, I have always heard stories, Stephen, that they want to capture the little child's soul or something like that. Have you come across any of that?
Sure, I detail that in immense detail in the book. I go in and describe it, and that was the fear of people growing up for 2,000 years, that if they had a baby, they would literally stand guard over it, because the leprechauns or the elves or the sprites or whomever, they call them the she, spelled S-I-D-H-E, pronounced S-H-E-E. The she would come in and change their babies. In other words, they could not reproduce a full functioning child. In other words, the leprechauns. So they would basically steal the human baby produced by two humans, and then they would exchange it, or that's why they came up with the word changeling, okay? You've heard that word before,
yeah.
C-H-A-N-G-E-L-I-N-G. So, and I'm spelling it because some of these words they sound like one thing and are spelled another way. So the fascinating thing is that it's kind of very similar to the alien abduction of little children also. And it's fascinating to me too that as you go into this, I got to tell you, George, when I did the research for little creatures, it started to blow my mind. That's what originally happened in Genesis 6 Giants, which, by the way, I've updated, and maybe we can talk about that, because one of the things that turned up that it seems like as more research is done and as more field investigation is done, one thing leads to another, and then what happens is that you get keys. I'm talking about, if you will, time-locked keys on specific information that's being hidden, and now it's all coming to the forefront. The U.S. military put out actually funded a study on all the Native American legends, and I've referred to it on your show before, and I quote from it in my book, True Legends, but they don't dismiss it. And again, in the Native American legends, the parallel to the British Isles of the changelings, of somebody coming in and taking an inferior genetic offspring and substituting it for a real one. And that's why, a real human child. So that's why there's so many, I'd say all these stories, fairy tales, always involve children for that reason.
They're dangerous, aren't they?
They're dangerous. I don't find I don't find any fun-loving fairies. Okay, they're all very malevolent. They're tricksters. So many of the words we use, the will-o-wisps. How many times have people? There was a lot of terminology in early America that have kind of passed away, but the will-o-wisps would be lights, and we're seeing orbs, and those lights would lead people into the swamps, and they were always trying to destroy small children. And fascinating enough, the jack-o'-lantern that people associate with Halloween was way beyond Halloween, the association. I mean, it was always if you will, it was in swamps or bogs or marshes. And their goal, totally, I'm saying it 3 times, was to destroy human beings by seduction. And you can't get away from that. So now we've got, in the little creatures, we've got the whole list of little creatures. I mean, brownies. Wasn't there a junior version of Girl Scouts called brownies?
Oh, yeah, sure. My little girls were in that. We all, as parents, we put all our kids in things like that.
Right, and so the point being is that there's so much, how do I say this, there's so much folklore that is related to the issues. Again, look, an advanced civilization from billions of light years, or as Carl Sagan would say, billions and billions of light years away, it's fascinating to me that they have such an affinity, if you will, for human sexuality. That's what you can't get away from. Incubus and succubus. The incubus is absolutely filling the pages of history. Now, when you've got guys like Napoleon, you know, a general, and he's believing in the little people. I've already said Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, obviously Sir Walter Scott. When you've got these people, these were the people of their time that were great thinkers, you know, William Griffiths. So when you've got these gentlemen, this caliber, these guys aren't dismissing it. By the way, in my book, Little Creatures, basically they're showing up now. And I believe the reason why they're coming back into our dimension full and with full fury is because during, if you remember, the age of enlightenment, science took the place of everything else they thought, and everything turned to an ism: communism, naturalism, socialism, Nazism. But what's fascinating as the Nazis, I don't know if you've had anybody on your show talk about the Third Reich and the occult.
Yeah, we've had Jerry Corsi and some people.
Yeah,
like that.
and the thing is that when you look at the Ahnenerbe, you and I have talked about that, the fascination with the Nazis wanting the supernatural power and to make contact with these people, even to the point of going to the Himalayas and you know, drilling human skulls, looking for the third eye, et cetera, et cetera. You can't get away from even those reports of looking for the little people, because what the little people possessed was, number one, the power of invisibility. Number two, the ability to move from point to point on the globe seemingly instantaneously. I mean, with great, there are reports that they themselves, the little people, said they can travel instantaneously to different points on the planet.
Can they vanish and then appear?
They vanish and appear.
Huh.
And the invisibility was always linked to their little hats, and I don't know why that is, okay? But the point, the idea was to capture these little guys, you know, you had to grab their hats.
Huh. You get the hat, you get it all.
Yeah, you get it all.
I want to talk with you about giants next hour, Stephen, but let's wrap up this hour with a few more thoughts about these little creatures. Why is it, though, that Hollywood, I'm not sure it was intentional, maybe it was, but I don't think it was, where they have portrayed these little creatures as fun-loving?
Well, I think it goes along with the seduction of evil, okay? And a good example of that is when you see the portrayal of even in the cartoons, you're always trying to see the Smurfs, okay? And little kids, it should not be lost on anyone that when we're talking about something that so involves children, that cartoons would be geared to the children in the same way that the fairy tales were. And I believe it's basically to seduce them and ultimately to lead them astray. And I see people now, let's just say Shrek, you know, on the other end of the spectrum too. He's an ogre. An ogre was a giant who ate people, a cannibalizing giant. So I think, to answer your question, I hope I'm answering it, is because of the seduction of it and the seductive nature of it. And I want to say this, that again, the people that have responded to me, George, I always like it when readers respond. They are just saying, wow, I never knew that. I mean, again, in the book, I'm dealing with demons, dragons, and it's fascinating, wasn't it, that a science magazine, Science, which is a peer-reviewed journal, talked about dragons returning to Earth. Of course, it was on April Fool's, but you can't separate even the things of dragons. You know, obviously you look at the history of China, and you can get a feel for dragons. Japan, the same thing. And then, you know, when I'm dealing with dwarves, too, I'm not talking about little people. I'm talking about, 6 to 12-inch entities. I think it will be amazing to people to find out that Pedro the Mountain Mummy, which was, I actually knew the guy that owned that at one time in Casper, Wyoming, how that disappeared.
I think I'd freak out, Stephen, if I saw a little person like that. Let's come back. talk a little bit more about that, then get into Giants on Coast to Coast AM. And we're going to take calls next hour with Stephen Quayle, so you don't have to call now as we talk about little creatures. Also, he wrote a book called Genesis 6 Giants. We've got to talk with him about that, too, when we come right back. And welcome back to Coast, back with Stephen Quayle. And as I mentioned, we'll take your calls next hour. They love lining up to call you, Stephen. Happens all the time.
Well, I don't know. I'm glad that people are interested in this. Let me talk about fictional indoctrination, because you and I have addressed that with the Twilight Zone. And by the way, what a great series!
Loved it.
I'm going back, George, and watching all of them, because if you remember, they had one too about on the airplane where they had the little demons on the wings.
The gremlins on the wings.
Yes, and gremlins are covered. By the way, this book it's a treatise. It's 460 some pages long, with enough footnotes to make a podiatrist happy. Okay, I mean the thing is footnoted because there's so much information. But I want to read something written by a guy, and this is really good, Alan Watts. And first of all, you and I have talked about, George, on Coast to Coast, that fiction is employed to indoctrinate cultures into new ways of thinking. Okay. And 1984, great example. But here's what he says. Things or ideas which would otherwise be seen as bizarre, vulgar, undesirable, or impossible are inserted into films in the realm of fantasy. When the viewers watch these films, his or her mind is left open to suggestion, and the conditioning process begins. Wow, wow, wow. You can take all the fiction. I'm a fiction fan. The motion picture, the history of motion pictures, whether it's Dr. Nosferatu or some of the things, the early science fiction. It's fascinating, man, but it's a conditioning process. 1984, good night. Telepresence. Now we're hearing Samsung say about their TVs, better watch what you're doing in front of our TVs.
We're watching you.
They're watching you. So what happens when you think you're watching it's watching you. So that's why the little creatures is so important. And I think, as you know, from past interviews we've done, I really have tried to do my homework, so to walk someone through, basically to let them draw their own conclusions, but they'll find out that the fairy tales and the childhood stories were far more malevolent and with a central theme. And, when you can control, again, a future generation by a present fear, you can mold that society. Here we are, 1984. We're forgive me, it's not 1984, but all the warnings are there.
You're going back into time on us, Stephen.
Yep, and the time machine, In essence, I still believe that one of the most prominent science fiction movies I ever saw was A Time Machine with Rod Taylor, because basically you had the Morlocks and you had the Eloys. And obviously there were a lot of people that he was suggesting that the industrialists were the Morlocks, who the standard working class was the Eloi. But that's what I believe we're getting prepared for. And to serve man, George, is not just a Twilight Zone episode. It literally is coming to pass, because when you see the changing of our atmosphere, chemtrail, weather warfare, finally after all these years now, enough people are looking up saying, wow, those aren't contrails, they're chemical trails. But the point being is everything is changing. The weather's changing. I believe it's being manipulated. Obviously, we're seeing strange events, the West Coast burning up and the East Coast freezing in its tracks.
Yeah.
So fictional indoctrination, it's really, really important that people understand this. They can get my books on my website. And by the way, Genesis 6 Giants now, that has been the most, I would say, this interesting subject matter that I've written about, judging not only on book sales, but the questions I get continually asked for the last 2 decades. What I did with Genesis 6, I went back and revised it. I found an ancient manuscript that I had no idea that existed by a gentleman named Woods, talking about the really big giants, like, for instance, the Cyclops, Polyphemus, Polyphemus. Some people pronounce it Polyphemus, but I believe it's Polyphemus. And they thought that was just a fictional account. Well, in Genesis 6 Giants now, I've dedicated over 200 pages to some of the oldest, biggest giants. Most people don't even know that Maximinus, or Maximus, some people pronounce it Maximinius, Maximus. The point being, this guy was 9 feet tall. He basically ate 40 pounds of meat, drank 6 gallons of wine, could outrun chariots, could basically punch a horse and knock it out, literally knock it out and knock its teeth out, kick a horse's hind quarter and break its hip. And this is a guy that was basically a 3-year emperor of Rome. People don't understand that Charlemagne had giants who were in his service that were recorded. Now, understand, recorded to be 18 feet tall. Well, then I get the skeptics saying, well, that wouldn't happen because of gravity. Listen, if you're an 18-foot-tall giant, something happened to your DNA, and again, the normal force of gravity, which is a pressure, is offset by the supernatural element working in that genome. So, for the record, giants aren't bound by the same things. I mean, when you're talking about some of these guys that are so big, now 400 feet's pretty tall, okay? People say, I don't believe that. Yet, it's recorded that the Roman emperors fought over his bones and that he was found in a mummified version with his elbow actually leaning on a ship that had gone ashore with its on the top of its mast, okay? His supposedly thigh was 120 feet. So where do the Cyclopean legends come from? Where do the Greek myths come from? And it's fascinating.
It's got to be based on things they saw.
They saw, I mean, and they weren't like doing acid in those days, I mean, they weren't basically just writing this stuff. And we're talking Roman emperors, and I think that some of the most amazing stuff to me, now understand, after writing about this stuff for 20 years, then I started to find out, whoa, basically when...
But why, Stephen, is that being kept the secret?
Okay, because, again, he who controls the past determines the future. Because they cannot explain the giants in an evolutionary mode except to call it Gigantopithecus, okay? And Gigantopithecus is the name that they call the great ape. But these guys are bigger than great apes. They're thinking individuals. They're smart. They're not like oafs, okay? They're not like Shrek with little, suction cup antennas coming out of their heads. Obviously, some of them are very grotesque, but they're also very, very bright. I mean, the settling of the British Isles, you cannot even deal with the history of the British Isles without finding the Romans fighting the Celtic giants or fighting the berserkers in Germany. 35,000 Roman soldiers were killed in one day by the tribe of giants called berserkers. So when someone says, well, he went berserk, they didn't even know where that term came from. So what I've done is gone back and basically rewritten the Genesis 6 account, and I haven't rewritten the account, but I've taken all of the older data, which is mind-blowing because, quite candidly, George, I missed it. I mean, when you talk about Josephus, Antiquity of the Jews, talking about Eleazar, a 10-foot tall giant, and even, by the way, the chroniclers of Charlemagne claim Charlemagne was 8 feet tall, and then they argue, was he 7, 9, or 8 feet? Well, I got news for you. He was a big dude, but he had guys that were 18 feet tall, and one of them was named, and I think it's pronounced Aenotheus, and I can't pronounce Anathus or something like that. The point being is that we're talking about individuals that legends related to, that bones indicated. Now, again, going back to Sardinia, a couple months ago in February, I sent a team over there, an expedition, and what we're doing, George, is basically putting together a series of TV programs that'll appear on Tom Horn's Skywatch TV, and then they'll be going to a Roku channel.
Okay.
Because, and I want people to understand this, that because of the nature of the undertaking, I got to kind of sound a little mysterious, because, I mean, we have to
You are mysterious.
Pardon?
You are mysterious.
Well, when people's lives are at stake, and again, I've got to watch over, because
by the grace of God, I don't want anybody to get hurt, and there are people that don't want this stuff out. This is called, by the way, core reality. And the core reality deals with the giants' ancient history. Now, why do people want to cover it up? The Great Smithsonian cover-up, okay, it's simply this. It does not fit into an evolutionary model. Number two, it has to do with supernatural beings called angels. Obviously, people don't believe that, especially in a humanistic world. But now we've got a whole change in science. We've got science going into the spiritual realm, i.e. Kurzweil's book, An Age of Spiritual Machines. We've got Bill Joy's famous treatise, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us Anymore. We're talking about the idea of singularity. We're talking about eternal life. The story on Drudge, the headline, wasn't it? The billionaires are something about they want to live forever. Well, the point being is that, it goes back to Eden. Ye shall not surely die. So there's nothing more seductive than the promise of eternal life apart from God, and basically eternal promiscuity. And by the way, I wrote about this in Xenogenesis, and what these guys are planning for a normal relationship is, I would say this, a transgenic, sex-crazed sex bot with multiple orifices and multiple abilities of the sex. In other words, the way that God created mankind wasn't good enough for them. They're trying to create monsters, and that's why I use the subtitle, turning men into monsters.
I hear the Smithsonian has all kinds of bones of giants.
Oh, they have more than that, okay? It's not only the bones, it's the mummified giants that they can extract live DNA from, the molars. Whenever the giants turn up, okay, the biggest mistake that I think those guys on, and forgive me, there was a show on the History Channel about giants. You cannot send a giant molar or extractable DNA to any of the mainstream colleges because they're all bought off. One of my guys had an interesting conversation with a scientist, and he said you cannot go to any of the mainstream genetic laboratories because we are informed to inform the powers when these artifacts come in or when extractable DNA comes in and they come in and take it. So who would be terrified of the truth? Well, those who seek to control the past want to determine the future. And you've had Tom Horn on your show.
Many times.
And Tom Horn has basically written about this in such a marvelous way that even the Vatican is looking for an alien god. When they name their telescope, one of their primary, spectroscopic or not infrared telescopes, Lucifer, and give it an acronym, and then Tom explains that he's interviewed probably some of the most prominent scientists within the Catholic faith. Now, that's not to say all Catholics are looking for an alien savior. But the point is when they're arguing over can aliens be saved, in other words, can aliens accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, you know that somebody's trying to change the focus. For instance, it's simple. Jesus died for mankind. The Scripture doesn't say he died for the fallen angels. It absolutely makes the opposite statement, Scripture says Jesus didn't die for the angels that sinned. So the point is that now look at Christianity. You and I have talked about this. Christianity is under attack like no other time in history. There have been 300,000 Christians slaughtered, martyred, butchered, and beheaded, burned alive, etc. in the Middle East alone. And see, there's this, if you will, there's this absolute spirit coming on the scene. You've asked me about Armageddon, Antichrist. You've asked me about the time of the end. And when I say the end times, I'm not talking about the end of the world. I'm talking about the global religion, one world religion, the global monetary, one world money. That's where we're headed right now. And you typically, meaning you, George, and I, Steve, usually talk about the economic situation, but things are accelerating, and they're accelerating to the point of vaccines that are absolutely unproven. And if you talk against vaccines, somehow you incur the wrath of mainstream media. So when have those devils ever told the truth?
They come at you like crazy. on that. I always tell people, Stephen, not to get vaccinated, to get vaccinated. I simply tell them, do what you want to do. I don't get vaccinated.
Yep. Do your homework. Robert F. Kennedy's speaking out against it, and he certainly wouldn't be considered a right-wing, conservative. All you have to do is have a child that has suffered due to vaccines and had the vaccines damage them beyond the point of repair.
Just takes one.
It just takes one, and I'll tell you what, the science behind vaccination. Look, mercury is a poison. Thimerosal is a poison. The guys that invented the vaccines are on record even laughingly, basically saying, look what we can put all this, and I'll use the word crap in this, inject it into a human body and sell it to the people on the guise of, and what was it, the flu vaccine was 82% ineffective?
That's what the CDC says.
Right, and that's the Center for Disease Creation. So the point is that if they're telling you, hey, it's no good, but take it anyway. See, I think we're so dumbed and numbed that they believe, and unfortunately I think we give them the ability to believe this, that they can just sell us any bill of goods, shove whatever down our throat in food, basically charge us for the water we drink pretty soon. I'm sure I made the statement, and I'm not kidding, they'll probably make you wear a Darth Vader helmet at some point with a regulator that, counts the amount of breaths you take and charge you for the air you breathe. That's how much these people want to control.
Look what's happening here in California now, Stephen. Rationing water, basically. You get fined $500 a day if you go over the limit they're going to appropriate for you.
Well, and unfortunately...
That's scary.
Yeah, I used to live in California. I lived in Palos Verdes. I know you guys are there, or you're there, part of the year?
Part of the year.
But the point being is desalinization should have been considered a long time ago.
Yes, absolutely.
And listen, obviously California is the country's salad bowl.
They dropped the ball. Somebody dropped the ball.
Well, and I don't believe it's by accident, George. If you look at the rain, I can absolutely see the storm fronts coming in up the coast of California. Then you see the chemtrails go up, and chemical trails, again, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at weather warfare quotes, if you look at the report, We Own the Weather 2025 by the U.S. Air Force, they were just basically putting it off 20 years. They owned it, 20 years ago. So the point being is that whether you have Nick Bagich on talking about HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, the weather control patents that are out there, 200 plus, and then you've got all the statements by former secretaries of defense, National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski, Cohen, Defense Secretary Cohen, others talking about weather wars as a way one nation attacks another nation and then blames it on God. So the point being is that California is under severe attack, and now I think even Oregon's starting to have issues with drought also. And then look at Lake Mead and look at...
they're all going down.
They're all going down. I mean, it's a bathtub ring, and actually, unfortunately, it's more like a toilet bowl because, ring around the collar is just tragic. I was down there and last year, and I can tell you this, I photographed that. That's the only thing I do to keep,
Oh, yeah, I saw your pictorial, by the way. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, it's just, well, thank you so much. But the thing is that through the desert Southwest, you just get down around Lake Powell, and you see literally the erosion marks of the water, and I can compare it to 20 years ago. Actually, you can compare it to 40 years ago, for instance, at the Waheat Marina, And George, it's I'm telling you this, and I said this on your show years and years ago. I think you remember this. I said the greatest migration in the history of the United States will take place over water.
We're going to come back with you, Stephen, and talk about end times prophecy next. Okay, next hour, we're going to take all your phone calls with Stephen Quayle as we talk about little creatures, giants, and when I come back, I want to get his take on end times prophecy. I've got my own reasons for that, and I'll explain it when I come back on Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back, Stephen Quayle with us. Stephen, let's talk about end times prophecy, and of course we're going to have a zillion calls for you next hour. I have a feeling that whatever's going on this planet might have to do with that, because people are uptight. They're strange. I talked about it in the first hour. Is it tied into, in your opinion, end times prophecy?
Well, absolutely. I think that everything that we're seeing now has been detailed. You know, it's funny, George, because the national press or international press uses more biblical terms. They use biblical terms to determine and define the times, although they want to make sure they deny, the God who wrote the book of Revelation. And I think it's fascinating. Number one, the persecution that's coming upon Christians is absolutely directly related to the Antichrist in Daniel chapter 8. Daniel chapter 8 talks about literally the entity that arises in the last days that makes war on God's people. And I think that one of the most telling, series of events that's happening is, let's just take the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I think you and I have touched briefly on that in the past. War, famine, pestilence. We're seeing all those things, and what's fascinating is the pale horse of the book of Revelation comes from the Greek word for chloros, or that is the Greek word from which we get the word chlorophyll. So the pale horse is fascinating because you're talking about green, and if you see the green movement, if you see the green being the color of radical Islam, and I think that what people have got to understand is this, is that wars and rumors of wars are going to take place until the big war. Now, here's my take on the prophetic significance of the time where we're at. In order to bring about the Antichrist, and Antichrist, people use that word, but Antichrist means take the place of Jesus Christ. Jesus said he came and they received him not, but another will come claiming to be the Christ, and him you're going to receive, talking to the people of the earth. So the point being is that now we've got a war brewing in the Middle East. Look at all the countries that have been overthrown, obviously Iraq, obviously Libya. We're trying to overthrow Syria, the whole thing with Lebanon, the war in the Middle East brewing, pretty much is going to be in fulfillment of Islamic theology that says before the Imam Mahdi can come on the scene, there must be a global nuclear conflagration. And so that's what's being set up there. The Bible talks about the time when no man will be able to buy, sell, or trade except he have the mark. And people will argue over what the mark of the beast is. Well, the nice thing is that contrary to what most people want to argue over, we're moving towards a cashless society. We're moving to all forms of biometric identification. We're moving to the time where the Bible literally says, who is able to make war against the beast? And the point being is that with every form of drone, from insects to blimps, with every form of biometric identification, from palm scans to implanted RFID chips to retina scans to vein scans to your thermal signature. Most people don't know this. And I think it was Frank Dukes, the secret man, who was Bill Casey's former head of the CIA's, how should we say, man that went out and fixed problems. I interviewed him years ago, George, and he made the statement that every person has a unique thermal signature, kind of like the movie Predator, in the color, and that can be delineated from outer space. Now, that was 15, 20 years ago. So we're coming into what I would call the biggest reign of terror and a global mind, if you will, a hive. And it's interesting, by the way, when you talk about giants that are in stasis, they call that a hive, H-I-V-E. That's what the special forces call that. And while we're on the air, I just got contacted by a guy who was in special forces in that whole realm, and he wants me to contact him in England. So I'll do that in the morning if you're listening. But the point is,
might have good information for you.
Yeah, really good information. But we are in the biblical time now where if you look at everything that's going on, we've got famine, we've got drought, we've got disease. Now, here's how it goes real simply. When you have a drought, it produces famine. When you have a famine, I'm talking on a global scale, you have disease. And now we've got a bunch of people creating mutagenic viruses. They create them, then they patent the vaccine,
and then basically they create the thing that's going to kill you, and then basically they create the antidote, if you will, or the vaccine to keep you alive long enough to clean your pockets. It's kind of like the American Medical Association, and you know, all of the real treatments are always suppressed for cancer in lieu of, you know, some of the cancer treatment. Chemotherapy is what, up to $100,000 for a bag of, you know, chemicals.
Smart business, huh?
Yeah, big business. Death is the order of the day, okay? And death followed after. So the point that I'm trying to make right now is we are living in the most expressed, visible, absolutely astonishing time in history. Everybody from the past thought they were living in the end days. Obviously, World War I, World War II, Korea, the war to end all wars. Well, it didn't end all wars. And it simply wasn't time. Now with the technology, and look what's happened in America. We've got 93 to 97 million people unemployed, the death of the middle class, and I mean the middle class's death. The home ownership in this country has gone to foreign buying groups, sovereign wealth funds, and Americans are now tenants, and that's a prophecy in Deuteronomy. Strangers from without will possess you from within. In other words, our country has been sold out, sold off, and basically sold down the drain. And people think that that's a harsh statement. Well, let me share this. It's a real statement. You know, unfortunately, virtual reality isn't what kills you. Real reality is what kills you. But by keeping people confused, if you will, preconditioned and pre-programmed in a virtual world, people simply won't see what's going on in the real world. So I believe we are seeing every single plague now at the beginning that was listed in the book of Revelation and the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and we are going to see a global mind, if you will, a global government, and it's going to have no room for people that use the word freedom and liberty. Unless you get assimilated in the Borg, they simply want to kill you, which means, and you've been watching Jade Helm, haven't you? There's a lot of brouhaha around the country over a military exercise that's going to take place for 2 months, and it's going to take place at night, and all special forces in the United States are going to be incorporated in called the human domain. Now, that sounds a little ominous, a human domain.
Well, and we know what has happened when they've done exercises before. The real thing happens.
Absolutely. And so, you know, the point being, I hope people will pay attention to this. Why would they notify the police not to respond to gunfire? Why would they claim that? See, here's what's happened in the United States. America's citizenry has been declared the enemy, while America's enemies have been given carte blanche. And for instance, you've seen that there are 49 terrorist camps known in the United States. Not one of them has ever been busted or raided by the FBI. Yet if you're a veteran, your guns are taken away, you're denied your medical benefits, and I am opposed to the way the veterans are treated in this country. You and I have talked about that. The point being is now is that we're seeing foreign troops in this country, and I don't think people get it, because the United Nations is the UN peacekeeping force. When you get on the Security Council, you've got Russia and China. I was a student of the Cold War. I wrote a book about it called Nuclear War and Nuclear Weapons Effects, Nuclear War and Weapons Effect 30 years ago. And the point is now we've got complete, if you will, in-your-face movement of troops, unparalleled. Even during the Cuban Missile Crisis, there were not the events taking place right now. We've had the state-of-the-art missile cruiser, Donald Cook, shut down by a MiG-25 using a form of electronic warfare and warfare countermeasures. We've had a nuclear sub forced to surface. We've got the situation that has taken place where basically the Russians have forced an aircraft carrier into port. They've openly declared and defined their new technology and said there's nothing like it. And then I think you and I did a show years ago when Igor Panin, P-A-N-I-N, or Paninin, Russian, said the breakup of the United States would take place by 2010. He was off by a few years, but his reasons for making that statement are in effect. So we've got now, and no one can deny the drought. If you look at the drought in California, you just mentioned that they're going to monitor your water, $500 fine.
Yep.
But again, the thing is that your housing market is one of the, and when I say yours because you live in California, the California housing market is one of the hottest areas in the country. But what's $1 billion set of properties worth when there's no water? The answer is nobody wants it if there's no water.
Nobody at all wants it.
And where do you grow? And where do you get your wine? I mean, obviously, anybody who's ever been the Sonoma, the wine country of California, what a beautiful, beautiful country of vineyards and productivity. Yet, where's the wine? I had a lady who listens to your show call me, and she owns a rather large ranch property. She's probably listening now. Her water rights were worth, I mean, seriously, the land was worth, I think, 10, 12 million. Her water rights were worth 50 million.
Wow.
So, and she asked me, should she sell or not? And I said, well, do you want to be there? If you can get money for the water you have now, why don't you go to some place where they have a lot of water, and then you never have to worry about getting thirsty, and you go with 50 million in your pocket. That was
exactly.
my advice.
Well, that's great advice.
So I think that what we're seeing now is the full integration. I think we are in the end times. I think we have started there. People will argue, Christians will argue, are we in the Great Tribulation? Are we in the period leading to the Great Tribulation? All I can tell you this is 300,000 Christians that have been martyred probably wouldn't be so concerned with are they in it or not, because they're fleeing for their lives, and they're fighting for their lives. And obviously, we have a problem in this country now where American citizens are being displaced. Look, I'm all for anybody can come to this country as long as they come legally. But what's happening is when Ross Perot said that giant sucking sound is American jobs going overseas, and you know why Ross Perot got out of the presidential race? Because he was threatened, okay? And not only he was threatened, but his family was threatened. So politics is dirty pool. And years ago, George, one of the statements I made, I said you can watch the power shift. This was 25 years ago, from the west to the east, because I said, what's better than 100 million Americans with credit cards? 1 billion Chinese with credit cards.
That's right. Lots of money going on there, Stephen. What about the Antichrist? What about the Antichrist?
Well, the Antichrist, I believe, will come on the scene. How you'll know the Antichrist is in the book of Revelation. It talks about God sends 2 witnesses. Those 2 witnesses are here during the time of Antichrist. Antichrist makes war on God's people and the 2 witnesses, and I believe they are literal people. Obviously, there's only 2 people in history that have not died, okay? One of them's Enoch, who wrote the book of Enoch, that, by the way, is what I would recommend everybody read. We don't have a whole book of Enoch, but they can go to my website, Genesis6Giants.com. Ancient manuscripts, it's there free. That's all there is what I have on my website, the book of Giants. But the point being is those 2 witnesses will have the power to literally call down fire from heaven, as so will the Antichrist. So when the Antichrist shows up on the scene, there will be 2 men. And again, the 2 men that haven't died are Enoch and Elijah. Elijah was taken away in a flaming chariot. That's where that song came from, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, okay?
Yep.
And that's the only 2 people. Now, the Bible says, and again, I'm using that as my reference, but I don't believe the Bible, people say. I said, well, you don't have to believe the Bible, but you better believe the headlines, because they were written in the Bible 2,000 years ago in the book of Revelation. The point being is that Enoch and Elijah come back on the scene. The Bible says it's given man once to die and once to judgment. The only 2 men in history that have never died, that the Bible records have never died. So the point being is when 2 guys show up, they will literally have all the power of Moses and all the power of Elijah. The original Elijah will be back, and they'll be telling everybody this is not he who he claims to be, but he's going to declare himself God. And if you see this, I'll give you a United Nations statement. I think it was Robert Mueller, it wasn't Robert Mueller, but it was the spokesman for the UN that said, give us a man who will give us peace, and be he a god or be he a devil, we will worship him. And so, they're going to get the devil. The devil's going to say he's God. People are going to worship him, and the people that are saying he isn't God, those people will be put to death. And Daniel 8 talks about him being able to make war on the saints and upon the holy people, and he's going to be successful. So the martyrdom that we are seeing now, George, is the start of a very horrific and horrible time period that's coming upon the whole world. And the world's silent. The world is silent. The president's silent. He can go to a prayer breakfast and knock Christians, but he sure can't speak out against the slaughter of all the Christians. Now, look, that's not a political statement. That is a statement of awareness. And the point that people have got to understand is that a house divided against itself cannot stand. And I remember when everybody was an American, not a this American, not a that American, not something in front of the word American, but we're Americans. And the point being is our uniqueness in the world now is being lost. And, when somebody said America's the greatest nation in the world and we intend to change all that, they certainly have for the worse. We have become a hissing sound in the nostrils of the nations around us. As point, people say, I don't believe that. Everybody has run to join China's AIIB, their investment bank. China will back the yuan or the renminbi, both names for the same currency, with gold. When I said that 20 years ago,
and they've secretly been buying it up like crazy, haven't
They've been buying up 30,000 metric tons. It's worth, I think, about $1.4 trillion right now. When gold finally jumps, and it will jump, if it jumps to 5 times its value, then they've got $7 trillion worth of yuan or in gold. And by the way, gold is rising in every currency of the world except the United States. The United States is the only one in the world that will allow you to have a naked short and sell something you do not possess that does not even exist at a loss. In other words, the gold is oversold. We've got the greatest gold deficit in the history of the world. We've got the greatest silver deficit. And there's a statement in monetary history.
Silver should be $40 an ounce, shouldn't it?
Pardon?
Silver should be $40 an ounce right about now, shouldn't it?
And on a 16-to-1 ratio, it should be higher than that. It should be closer to $100 an ounce.
Wow.
So the point is that why do they keep it down? Because whenever you control the money, you control the people. That's why the rest of the world, I salute China's wisdom. They have stealthily, they have absolutely been brilliant in their acquisition of gold. Russia's doing the same thing. India just took off part of its tariff on gold. Look, when you've got the BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, basically forming the AII bank, and you've got the former allies, the United States, running to that bank, the jig is up on the American dollar. And by the way, it was one of the spokesmen for this administration, I think in the second year of Obama's reign, that made the statement, the American dollar, we intend to destroy the American dollar. Well, I submit to you the American dollar is being destroyed. So now the point being is that everybody wants to move to a cashless society, and Russia and China will withstand. The Bible says, getting back to your question originally to me, the Bible says that even though the world will come under the control of Antichrist, the kings of the East will rise up to resist him.
Stephen, we're going to come back. I'm sorry to cut you short, but we've got to hit the break, but we'll come back with more and then phone calls next. Okay, and this is the hour we take your phone calls with Stephen Quayle. You've heard what we've been talking about, but if you're just popping in, we're talking about giants, little creatures. We'll do a quick review, and also, of course, end times prophecy. Welcome back to Coast, Stephen Quayle with us. Stephen, the break got you at the end there where you were doing a little review about end times. If you want to go back to that for a little second, and then we'll talk about little creatures for those just joining us, then we'll go to calls.
Well, I think, first of all, the end times, we're seeing things we've never seen before. The book of Revelation talked about knowledge increasing. Obviously, the book of Daniel prophesied that. When you're dealing with little creatures, George, my emails fill up with people that and this is no kidding, daily, from people having encounters with night terrors, nightmares. The little creature phenomena is coming now into full force and effect. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that I think is going to be important. I've always maintained that when I write the stuff I write, It's to take away the fear, because I can tell you this, that all the events are becoming almost overwhelming on a daily basis. And so with the little creatures and the gates of hell, Jesus said the gates of hell won't prevail. That doesn't mean they won't try. And with the events that are taking place, the interdimensional beings, while we were on the break, I got a call from a friend, Arthur, a veteran, God bless you, Arthur, and he said they were in the North Georgia mountains, and they were basically 80 yards away from 3 Sasquatch. Every time I'm on Coast to Coast, people are absolutely reporting in from all over the country. The Native Americans are claiming massive amounts of supernatural events now taking place on the reservations. When it comes to Sasquatch, I was told by, again, a special operations commander that Sasquatch always have a little, and I'm talking like an impish-like attendant. I've never heard anybody talk to that actually cleans up their feces. That's why you don't see a lot of fecal contaminant, and absolutely takes the hair up. Now, do they miss some? Evidently. But I never heard that before, George.
That is
and I
strange.
believe the Special Forces community calls Sasquatch Species 7, okay? I don't know why they chose that, but I believe that's what they call them. So the interesting thing is, while you and I are on the air tonight, that Arthur, a veteran, has just been in the woods in North Georgia, and hearing him, he said that it sounds like a bunch of chimps arguing amongst themselves. In Montana, Red Lodge, Montana is basically south of Billings, but we had an interesting event taking place there about 2 years ago where a woman called me, and her little girl was being communicated with by her, I think she was 6 years old, by Sasquatch in that area, okay, and by a family. So what I'm noticing, whether you saw that Arizona highway, I believe it was the Arizona highway where the family of Squatches was, that it's becoming more prevalent. Well, I believe that the portals, okay, if Jesus would have said the portals of hell will not prevail, because that's what a gateway is, all the reports that are coming in, it's amazing. People are seeing both giants now, and they're seeing the little creatures. So if people want, they can go to my website, stevequayle.com. The new Genesis book is 60% different with some of the most mind-blowing stuff, and I've got a special. I'm giving them $10 off that one. It's over on the right-hand side. But the guy that did the illustration, if you want to go see the real size we're talking about giants, Lee Oakes did it for me, a very, very gifted artist. You can see the size of the people that had to play or interface with these giants, and it's in the Temple of Zeus. And the thing that's fascinating to me is the actual size of Woods' work. He details, chronicles all the Roman emperors, all the famous historians, whether it's Josephus, whether it's Pliny, all these guys that are out there that have recorded all this stuff in ancient history. So I'll tell you what, I'm getting feedback on little creatures. People say, I knew those things were bad. It will change the way you look at cartoons. It will show you a malevolent reason behind a lot of the cartoons. And this is why kids are getting into some very dangerous ground, and this is why we've got so many issues with young children having so many problems. I believe they're spiritual, and I believe that the answer is spiritual also. And I believe that people are going to basically start to lose it as the things that you and I talk about and everybody else that's a guest on Coast, it's not getting better. That's a fair statement, is it not?
You're absolutely right. And what do you think about video games? Any influence there?
Oh, big-time influence. As a matter of fact, Jade Helm, and I don't play video games, so I apologize to all the gamers out there. I just don't know. I don't have the time to do it. But the point is that I believe it's called Diablo 3, and Diablo means the devil, literally talks about Jade Helm as being a force. When you look at the Jade Helm logo, there's steganation in it. That means you can hide code within the photographs. Now, you've got to have the key. And obviously the people that generate it are sending the key to the people that will decipher it. But the fascinating thing to me is the fact is that all of the hidden meaning, look, every symbol has a meaning. And Jade Helm is basically the evil force, if you will, in Diablo 3. is specifically named Jade Helm. So it tells me that the people that are promoting this, and basically that's the name of the exercise, are very aware of what they're talking about. They don't name their operations just because they basically, throw a bunch of names in the hat. It's very specific. You can just go on Jade Helm and look up some of the different stories. I got a lot of them on my website by different authors. And the point being is that they're very, very, very telling. The symbolism is telling you everything. And there's even a wooden shoe in the Jade Helm. Have you seen that, George? Have you seen
No, I have not.
Okay, I'll send it to you so you can see it. But, the swords, and you think it looks like a special operation, but there's a wooden shoe in the middle of the logo. And that wooden shoe was interesting because the wooden shoe is what were given to the Jews and others in Nazi concentration camps to wear, okay? But within that shoe is, I'm told by guys who know how to do this, I don't, is a steganographic code. And then in the background, there's a matrix that leans to the left. That matrix is like those uniform product codes that you can scan with your iPhone or smartphone or something.
That's right.
And that's there, too. I can't tell anybody what it means, but I can tell you this. Someone's going to great extent to put plenty of code and plenty of symbols in there to give us a heads up of what's coming. Never in the history of the United States has a 2-month-long exercise taken place at night by special operations with the human domain, and that's aimed at the United States population. So my question is, what have we done that we have become the focus at the expense of the people that are in this country, like the Iraqi, who was a military trainer that got picked up speaking perfect Russian? And isn't it amazing that Jade Helm takes place when we're prepared for World War III? I know nuclear policy from Russia. They are very clear. They are very specific. They will do what they say. Their electronic countermeasures are second to none, as a matter of fact, because they took Nikola Tesla more seriously than we did at the beginning. They have advanced weaponry that even Vladimir Zhirinovsky said that at any point they can destroy any place on the planet. He's not talking about nuclear weapons. I've heard special operations guys say they have weapons, George, this is their exact quote, that make nuclear weapons look like pea shooters.
You may be right.
That's a pretty powerful statement.
Let's take some calls here for you, Stephen. Let's go to Bergen County, New Jersey. Karen to get us going. Hi, Karen. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for you and your guest and the information that you're providing for us. Thank you for your great work. My concern is for the United States. My concern is it seems like we are way beyond what anybody can do to stop what's happening. It just seems like we are at the end of the end for the United States. So my question is twofold. Number one, what does the end of the United States look like? When I Google FEMA body caskets, there's thousands upon thousands of them. Is it from civil unrest? Is it because they're going to come against us? I'm not sure. The second part, which I'd like to get your view on that, the second part is, again, regarding the United States. What do we do to protect ourselves? It doesn't seem like there's anywhere that we can go except out of the country.
What do you think, Stephen?
Well, okay, I'll take the first question because I agree with her conclusion. At this point, it's too far gone. The time, and now when I say that, the country, there's no political solution to a spiritual problem, okay? I've said on the radio, remember years ago when I said I see civil war coming, and you said, well, you hope not?
I remember that.
Yeah, and so the problem is that there has to be civil war because one of the plans for the takedown and take out of the United States by international communism was to generate a civil war. So I believe that the country, as a country, has been basically taken over. It will be taken down. We've been sold off, and literally, most people don't know this, but when China bought our debt, they demanded physical assets as collateral. And you can go on like Chris Martinson's website and others, and they actually detailed what China demanded. And so the point is that ma'am, you are absolutely correct. leaving the country. I think that's what everyone has to decide for themselves. I know I wrestle with that. At this point, I live in Montana. A lot of people I respect are leaving the country. People can't separate the fact that there's no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. Obviously, we got here after 9/11 under George Bush's administration. Everything changed after 9/11. The point being is that now we have foreigners that are given more money, $35,000 a year, given rights that you and I don't have as American citizens. We've been displaced. So the point is that if you're going to look at some place to go, you need to go probably, you've got to look at China, Ecuador. Chile, Ecuador, Uruguay, Paraguay, South America, or you can go to some of the former Eastern Bloc countries that still have more freedom than we do in this country. George, I think now we're 17th or less in freedom.
Isn't that amazing? That's unbelievable.
So, and I would say this, I tell everybody this, the first and foremost thing everybody has got to do is things are changing so fast as they have to get right with God. Now, I'm not ashamed to say that. I believe that, it was because of God's love, for God so loved the world. Look, here's the difference between what you're seeing in radical Islam, what you're seeing in Islam versus Christianity. The Christians aren't out cutting people's heads off. The Christians aren't burning children alive. The Christians aren't saying, we're going to kill you. The Christians aren't doing any of that. Yet, because they're not doing that, and they haven't stood in the pulpits against evil, they want to be, friendship with the world, enmity with God. I believe we're coming under divine judgment in this nation, and I don't believe there's any way to escape it, meaning as a nation, but I believe individually people can prepare, they can pray, and they can, and I can't tell people where to go. I'm just telling everyone that it's probably best to really make it a matter of prayer to where you're going to go. Because if you stay here, the last place you want to be is, sorry, George, you want to be not on the West Coast. You don't want to be in the Midwest around New Madrid or New Madrid. I guess
that's where St. Louis is.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. So basically, everybody's got to have a place that they feel is going to have a better chance. In the realm of nuclear war, I was on record over 15 years ago saying before God allowed the United States destroyed, he's going to show you the sins of the leaders to the people. I think that's happened. I think that when you absolutely tolerate every form of lying, see, there's no truth in this country anymore. Truth is relevant. One man lies, another swears to it, Congress stamps it, the states enforce it, and everybody says, whoopee. Well, that's not truth. That's just basically groupthink. And I think the idea is that people have got to understand the plan is to generate a civil war in the United States. The plan from Bill Ayers' statements, Weather Underground, Larry Graithwall, when he penetrated them, was to kill off in those days 30 million people in order to bring about the revolution. Now with the population increase, that would be 85 million. I'm sorry I don't have a positive answer. I believe this country is under divine judgment, and I believe that it's too late to turn around as a nation, but I believe everybody can seek what's best for them and their family on an individual basis.
George in Chicago, first-time caller. Welcome to the program, and good morning, George.
Good morning. I am very impressed by your guest tonight, George.
He knows his stuff.
He sure does. And I was going to talk about giants because they did find some giant graves. It was on the news outside Madison, Wisconsin. The Native Americans killed them, and they found their graves just last summer.
And how old do you think they were?
I don't remember how old they said they was, but they said American Indians killed them because they was eating people.
Well, that's true, Stephen. Weren't they cannibals, these giants?
Well, yeah, and the Native Americans did kill them, and thank you, caller, for that, because, they've found so far 18 strange giant skeletons. What's interesting about Wisconsin, one of the ways that giants were killed is by using copper arrowheads, solid copper, and obviously Upper Peninsula Michigan and the copper mines in Michigan, that area. But Wisconsin also has pyramids. And this is one of the best-kept secrets in the country. The way the Native Americans would kill the giants is that giants typically hung out in caves, and they'd build fires, and because giants are part human, they could suffocate them. They also had to use copper. But it was, it was interesting because the Native Americans knew, and the entire, if you will, the entire continent of both North America and South America is filled with the wars between giants and men.
Let's go to Skype caller Tony in Virginia. Tony, you're up with us. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, George. How you doing?
Good, Tone. Thank you.
Good. Mr. Quayle, I have two quick questions for you, and you can answer them either way you want to.
You will. You will.
Well, either one you want to take first. Dinosaurs and Bigfoot.
There you go. Stephen, we got a minute left, and you may have to finish that after the break. Dinosaurs and Bigfoot.
Dinosaurs are interesting, and Bigfoot, I believe that the Bigfoot is obviously a trans-dimensional being that comes through stargates, portals. Dinosaurs in the Book of Giants, and again, I encourage everybody to go on my Genesis 6 Giants website. The Book of Giants says the fallen angels not only mated with humans, but they genetically altered all the creatures on the earth, too. So they genetically corrupted everything from insects to reptiles. I believe that obviously dinosaurs were a function not of evolution, but of genetic mutation and mutagenesis caused by fallen angels.
That could be amazing. Stephen, stay with us. Going to come back in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM with final phone calls. If you want to track what Stephen is up to these days, just go to his website, linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Well, on our next Coast to Coast program, we're going to talk about Nibiru, that possible Planet X coming around with Bob Fletcher. And then later on in the program, there's a push for a 51st state. It's called the State of Jefferson. What does that all mean? We'll talk about that as well on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. Stephen, I was just looking at the emails of the giant picture you sent me. Wow. Unbelievable, huh?
Well, and thank you for the gentleman calling in from Madison, Wisconsin. Probably one of the greatest cover-ups in the history of the United States is obviously all the mounds that have been unearthed. During the Smithsonian's inception, the gentleman that took over at Powell basically made sure that nothing that was contrary to his predetermined bias would even be handled by the Smithsonian. By the way, in my book, Long Walkers, what I'll do, George, I'll send you some panels for the like a storyboard. I'm trying to get somebody, and I've been contacted by a couple people in Hollywood to do a major motion picture of that. People want to do it more in a docudrama. I say it can't be done that way. But what's fascinating, I take on the Kincaid expedition that took place in the Grand Canyon, and I was watching one of the new History Channel, I believe it's on the History Channel, with a geologist, and he was talking about the Egyptians that came. It was Mark Antony and Cleopatra's son that fled Egypt with 50,000 of his followers. Did you ever watch that show?
Parts of it, yeah.
Yeah, and I got to tell you something. Based on everything that I know, and I've been contacted after doing Coast to Coast, after we do shows like this, I get contacted by ex-military guys. I was actually contacted by one of the military men that went into the cavern that basically Professor Kincaid found with the giant sarcophaguses and basically took them out. And the guy was scared to death. I can tell you the real people because they can tell me certain things I withhold from the public to know that they're talking, you know what I'm saying? Because I got to make sure when people are reporting to me, they're not recycling stuff that's already out there. But fascinatingly enough, the Grand Canyon, as well as the deserts of Utah, I've had an archaeologist from Utah in the Moab area, and he never told me where, but find a giant red-haired, and by giant, he says, Steve, the thing was 12 to 14 feet tall, and a king and queen, both mummified, sitting on their thrones in a cave in the Moab-Utah area. Well, that just sinks and links when you look at the geographical position of Moab to the Grand Canyon. That whole place was filled with giants. So when you go to the Anasazi ruins, and the Anasazi means the ancient ones, or it can even be read the alien ones, you'll find that they were a smaller people, very small, and they lived under the cliffs because the giants used to catch them, literally, and eat them. So in order not to be shish kebabs, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic, the thing that you brought up earlier when the gentleman called in on Wisconsin, there is none, zero, nada information in the Americas that even indicate that there were any vegetarian giants, okay? They were all cannibals.
Ah, scary times. Back to the phones we go. Michael in Long Island, New York. You're on with Stephen Quayle. Michael, go ahead.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Thank you. I'm at the edge of my seat again. These shows are really exciting me. The question for Mr. Quayle is, he foresees a collapse of the United States, but is he talking about the government collapsing and perhaps that the American spirit will continue?
I think I understand the question.
Yeah, let's rephrase it a little bit more for us, Michael.
Oh, okay. Well, you're seeing that you're talking about a scattering of a nation because of an economic collapse, but isn't it really our government that will fall, but that the spirit of the people will continue?
Well, the spirit of the people, look, there's one thing about freedom and liberty. The people that value that above all are not going to die. There's going to be resistance, and the Civil War is going to take place, and as a matter of fact, the plan is to do that. The government will collapse, okay, and the United States will be split up, if not only by political reasons, by geographic and geologic reasons. There's plenty of prophecy. Will it come to pass? It remains to be seen. But the point being is that the new Madrid is going to split the country down the middle. California has been, how should I say this, being prepped more than usual about the big one that they thought would be further off in time. So I think it's a geological splitting. I think it's an ideological splitting. I think you'll see, if you will, nations within, literal individual nations within this country. And we haven't talked about EMP. Electromagnetic pulse, whether it's from a cosmic storm, a solar storm, or basically just a cyber attack. We used to hear about EMP being an electromagnetic bomb or whatever, based on Russians busting into the White House. And by the way, George, that was not true, what's being reported in the press. They did bust in, but they had access to the president's phone and all of his secret coded ability to speak with everybody of Congress. It's not Congress, his cabinet. The point being is what damage was done. In essence, it's kind of like that movie Sneakers, No More Secrets. So I see the split up of the country. First of all, there's going to be an economic collapse. You cannot continue to print money with the amount of debt out there and the foreigners who own the collateral not calling it due. The Chinese are the largest owners on the West Coast and on the East Coast and through the Midwest of prime real estate, commercial real estate, and basically they got all the money, but they're not just buying the United States, they're buying off entire areas of production through the world. They're very astute people, and unless people understand the history of China, which I've made a study of, it's an undertaking of, how should I say this, immense ignorance in the American public not to understand what China's doing. They're military. They just fielded 3 new subs. So I see the United States coming apart. I believe the United States has been sold off, parted out, and so the American spirit will live on. I believe there will be a revolution. I believe there will be a civil war, and I believe that the people in this administration want that. That's why the preparation for Jade Helm and everything else is getting in preparation. The thing I see causing the Civil War is a financial collapse. You cannot continue to just create money out of thin air. And also, when you hold the mortgage, whoever holds the mortgage to America's mortgages, when they come to collect, there's going to be a lot of displaced people.
All right, next up we go to St. Thomas in Canada. James is with us on the international line. Thanks, James. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here, actually.
Sure.
Yeah, actually, I'm a Christian myself, and I just wanted to read something from the book of Joel here. It says that before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes, that he will pour out his Spirit upon all flesh. Now, what I've been hearing in the churches in about the last 5 years is that there is this great revival that is supposed to be coming, the greatest that the world's ever seen. I just wanted your comment on that, and also as well, is it true that China is actually becoming a Christian nation? Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Is there going to be a great revival, Stephen?
Not before persecution, not a great all the let me share this. I've heard that too, and the point being is that where does it happen? All the great revivals have happened mostly out of the church. Azusa Street, the Welsh revival. I studied revivals in history. The number one key to revival is repentance. I see no repentance, and obviously Nineveh had a revival. They took God seriously. The point being is without repentance, there can be no revival. So I don't see that coming until the persecution comes. I think God will more than equip his saints. Now, if you go on in that book of Joel and your young men, it talks about will dream dreams and prophesy. So I think with the amount of people that are having dreams and visions of the end, and I get, George, people from all over the world sending me, when people who don't even understand what's going on in America are seeing America embroiled in civil war, nuclear war, etc., I would say this: out of the midst of great persecution will come great revival, but revival will not precede the persecution because, unfortunately, God's people are asleep, and I think that God is going to allow wake-up events to take place. And I'd say this, that most of the big churches in America won't even talk about the stuff that we're talking about on Coast to Coast. They know nothing. They take the what is it? Was it Sergeant Schultz? They know nothing.
Knowing nothing?
Yes, they don't want to deal with reality. I call it reality avoidance
Hogan's
syndrome,
heroes.
and I think that's where they're at.
Let's go to Oregon. Kurt's with us. That's West, obviously. Kurt, go ahead, sir.
Hi.
Hey,
thanks
Kurt.
for taking my call.
Sure thing.
This is the second time I've been on in almost 3 years. First time I was talking about twins because I'm a twin.
Oh, good. My dad was one, too.
But my comment, I have some comments and questions. And my first comment is talking about the Washington vision of the Civil War. And second comment question is talking about why are they targeting me, little old me here in Eastern Oregon. I've been developing sleep paralysis for the last probably 30 years, 40 years. Little people showing up in my dreams, in my visions, and also talking about why should I run anywhere when I'm God's person? Should I just stay where I'm at, dig in, because the Bible says that God's people will not see his wrath.
That's true. The Bible says God's people will not see his wrath, but the book of Revelation says, woe unto inhabitants of the earth, for the devil has come down. There's a difference between the wrath of God on the ungodly and the wrath of the devil on the righteous. Now, first of all, the other question is people need to stay where God puts them unless God tells them to move, okay? I'm not telling everybody to move. If the Lord tells you to move, move. I'm in Montana. Everybody's telling me to move. The point being is that I haven't been led to move yet. I would. Second of all, did I understand you correctly, sir, that little people are showing up in your dreams?
Yes, and very sexual and sensual ways. And since I was probably the last 10 years, I have been experiencing these dreams, very visual, graphic, and sometimes physical dreams of little people with bat wings defiling me physically, sensually, through, wet dreams, and the like.
All right,
Well,
Stephen,
well,
let's
let
move
me
on.
let me help you there, okay? Number one, I'm not saying that's not happening. I believe that's happening. You're having a classic succubus. Have you ever been in the occult? Have you ever been into Ouija boards or anything like that?
I'm sure he has. I moved on, Stephen.
Okay. Yeah, that's a ton. Hey, George, there's sometimes you just got to move on, and that's one of them. I was going to be tactful.
Yes. Yeah, you were. And don't worry, it never got on. Let's go to Mike in Indiana. Welcome to the program. Michael, let's get you in here.
How we doing? Hey,
And your phone is too bad, Mike. We got to get you fixed. Something's going on. Sunspots or something there, Stephen.
Yes, sir.
My
well,
God.
it's interesting. When you talk about this stuff, it seems the sunspots show up quite readily.
Let's go to Dave in Texas. Give it a try, David. Go ahead. Dave?
Hello.
Yep, you're on, David.
Hey, man, I'm down in Nacogdoches, Texas.
Jeez.
And I have a question for your guest.
Okay, sir.
I'm right in the middle of Gateham. And the people I've been talking to in my church and everything, they just don't believe it.
I couldn't hear you. What did you say?
I said, I'm in the middle of Jade Helm.
I still don't understand you.
He's saying, George, he's in the middle of the exercise going on, and the people in his church don't understand. Is that correct, sir?
You mean the exercise, the military exercise, Stephen?
Yes, sir. That's what he's talking about.
Okay, we've only got a minute left, so he's right in the middle of it. Of course, a lot of people aren't going to believe this stuff. You know that.
No, they're not. And it's interesting. Whenever the truth comes out, the propaganda goes out against it, okay? I mean, obviously, I've seen statements against Alex Jones. I've seen statements against me. I've seen statements against All News Pipeline.
Well, I get it, too. I get it, too.
Yeah, no. And I said to you, the point being is that anything, listen, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. So we are in a time of, universal deceit, okay? So there's nothing they're going to tell the truth. And listen, if they're coming to take us away, blow us away, to take us to the FEMA camps that they denied exist, now they admit they exist, then the point being is people had better be on their guard. There better be in an attitude of prayer, and they better make sure their hearts are right with God and be ready to do whatever it takes to defend their lives and their families.
You got it. Stephen, my friend, always a pleasure. Take care of yourself, and let's keep in touch, okay?
Thank you, George.
Stephen Quayle, one of a kind, his website linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Make sure you're part of our programs all week. You're going to love it. We're going to knock your socks off right here on Coast to Coast AM. For Nathan Staten, Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladesseur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Borelson, George Knapp. I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. I'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone. From the City of Angels near the Pacific Ocean, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, across the nation, around the world. I'm George Norrie, and welcome to Coast AM. Next hour, the prophecies of John Hogue. Here's what's happening. In Baltimore, 10 people arrested so far tonight in Baltimore following looting, burning buildings, and riots throughout the night and this morning. The streets were largely calm this evening. Results of Monday night's looting, by the way, everywhere. Burned out cars and buildings, looted stores, lives of innocents who lost everything in the violence that led to a reported 235 arrests and left 20 police officers injured. In Missouri, a man was shot in the lower leg in Ferguson as a group of about 50 protesters there tonight. Police monitoring the protest quickly took that person into custody, recovered a gun there. Dr. Peter Bregan, of course, is our resident psychiatrist. I thought it'd be time that we brought Peter in to talk with him about the mindset of people who riot and loot. Peter, what are they trying to prove here? And I'm not talking about protesting whether you agree with what the police did or did not do, but what about the looters and the rioters?
I think we have to go back and look at what's happened to children and family life in the inner cities, George. Back I was in D.C. in the late 60s when the riots took place there, and I began talking with members of the black community. And one of the things I heard as early as, I would say, 1968, was we have a lost generation of children. We are losing our children to broken families, to drugs, to gangs. In 1994, George, my wife and I wrote a book called A War Against Children of Color, in which we emphasized what was happening to these children in terms of the violence that surrounded them, the broken families, the drugs, and the racism and that people talk about a great deal now. But as we've watched more and more, it's getting clearer and clearer that the biggest enemy right now of the growth and development of black children is this idea that everything is about grievances against other people, grievances against the whites, grievances against the government, entitlements from the government. If I wanted to destroy somebody, I'd make them feel that their life was a grievance. And this has now become so endemic. Generation after generation after generation is growing up without suitable family life, amid huge violence. Black-on-black violence is huge compared to white-on-white violence or interracial violence. So we have these generations now, because, back then, people I knew who were African-American, the leaders in the community, were saying we have a lost generation. But we're generations later now, and we just have a lot of young and older, but looking at the people who riot, children, youth, and young adults, who have very little hope, very little education. They literally are more likely to go to jail than to go to college. They're more likely to be one of the greatest sources of death in young black people is black-on-black violence.
Well, and it doesn't paint a picture for the future then, Peter, at all, does it? Jeez, it's scary. There was a video that went viral today of a African-American mother slapping the heck out of her son who was involved or close by the demonstrations and the riots, and she was just mortified that he was there, and she chased him all over the place, whapping him all over. Good for you, Mom. Well, listen to this now. A guy named Jose Molina in the Los Angeles area was performing a maintenance on a 35-foot-long oven at the Bumblebee Foods tuna company. He was cleaning it out. Well, one of his coworkers didn't know he was in that 35-foot oven, tossed in 12,000 pounds of canned tuna, turned on the oven pressure cooker, cooked him to death. Unbelievable. Folk music legend Joni Mitchell is in a coma and unresponsive for 4 weeks after she was admitted to the hospital. Mitchell, whose real name is Roberta Joan Anderson, is known for hits including Big Yellow Taxi and The Circle Game, as well as her role in the 60s music scene. Jack Eli, the singer known for Louie Louie, the low-budget recording that became one of the most famous songs of the 20th century, has died at his home in Redmond, Oregon, after a long battle with an illness. He was 71 years old. Home ownership. The rate in the first quarter of this year fell almost 64%, the lowest since 1990. And what about Twitter? Drops 18%. The founders of Twitter today lost $750 million. Ouch. Let's check in with investment advisor Catherine Austin Fitz. Not a day for housing and not a day for Twitter, Catherine. Jeez.
As some people would say, that the U.S. equity market looks a bit toppy.
It sure does.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, George, it's called a high beta stock. You have stocks that are trading at very high PEs, and there's a lot of momentum, and they can be very volatile, and both up and down.
Their earnings were leaked out today, I guess, before they're supposed to, and people just caught wind of it and ran away from it.
Well, here's with the dollar this strong, earnings are soft, and people are nervous about it. One of the big 3D printers